Chapter 24. Then we returned to the dinner table. Everyone talked and laughed for a long time. When it was over, Jiang Qing sent someone to take me and Duanmu K back home. When we returned, Duanmu K didn't seem to be in a good mood. He sat alone on the sofa by the window and stared blankly. I looked at his worried face and was worried. Perhaps LV Sishiwa's appearance had affected Duanmu K greatly. I poured a glass of water and handed it to Duanmu, Quebec. He glanced at me, his eyes full of unhappiness. Maybe I'm not a good man. He shook his head. I held his head in my arms and gently stroked his hair. The past you is the past. At least now you're a good husband. Actually, I don't care how she treats me. But if you're involved, I can't imagine what I'll become. Hearing him say that, I was inexplicably moved. There are some things that two people have to bear together, right? Duanmu K hugged me tightly. Shaoli, it's my fault. We were in the mood for our honeymoon. You're thinking too much. Tomorrow, I'll take you out for a walk. You'll be fine. He nodded gently. After a quiet night, we snuggled together and slept soundly. We didn't wake up until noon. In the morning, we received a call from Jiang Qing. He wanted to arrange a driver for us to go out, but Duanmu K and I refused. The two of us discussed and decided to go to a bar to experience New York's nightlife. Of course, we still told Uncle Jiang about it. Uncle Jiang was afraid that we would be bullied in an unfamiliar place, so he arranged for Jiang Qing to come with us. Just after noon, Jiang Qing came to my house and didn't want to leave. He kept pestering Duanmu K to play games with him. Duanmu K couldn't refuse, so he braced himself and played with Jiang Qing for the whole afternoon. At night, the three of us casually dressed up and went to a very famous local bar. Although the bar was small, it was very popular. After entering the bar, he looked around. Most of the people there were American locals. There were also a few foreigners. There were still many people who came here to have fun. The three of us found a seat near the stage and sat down. The waiter warmly received us. Jiang Qing said a few words to the waiter and gave him a tip. The waiter smiled and left. Jiang Qing asked us to wait for a while. The official performance hadn't started yet, but all the booths were already filled. The environment was pretty good. After a while, a tall and sweet mixed-race girl wearing a short cheongsam walked toward us. Jiang Qing welcomed her with a happy face. He pulled the girl into his arms and gave her a gentle kiss. The two of them turned around. The girl smiled and waved at us. Jiang Qing pulled her in front of us. Big sis, this is my girlfriend, Cece. He turned around and said to the girl, this is my brother-in-law, Duanmu, Quebec. This is Big sis, Cold Glaze. I've mentioned them to you before. Cece threw herself in front of me with a smile and tightly held my arm. Big sis, you're so pretty. You're even prettier than Brother Qing described. I awkwardly replied, hello, Cece. Duanmu K also smiled and waved at her. Cece smiled even more happily. She stood in front of me and looked at us. Big sis, brother-in-law, you guys go ahead and play. I'll go make some arrangements. I'll be back soon. After saying that, Cece waved her hand and left. Before she left, she didn't forget to give Jiang Qing a kiss on his face, leaving a red lipstick mark on his face. I looked at Jiang Qing with a smirk, waiting for him to explain to me what had happened. Jiang Qing scratched his head. Okay, I'll tell you. She's Cece. Her father is American and her mother is Chinese. This bar is owned by their family. Cece is the best bartender here. I met her by chance when I came to this bar with my friends. I fell in love with her at first sight and spent a lot of effort to get her. Does Uncle Jiang know? Duanmu K asked. Jiang Qing nodded vigorously. My dad knows. He's also seen Shaoli. My mom also likes Shaoli. If nothing unexpected happens, I plan to propose to her this year. I suddenly seemed to understand something. I hooked my arm around Jiang Qing's neck. You little brat, did you arrange for us to come here today so that we could meet our future sister-in-law? You're a scheming brat. Big sister, please spare me. I was afraid that if I told you and brother-in-law too directly, you two would deliberately prepare. How unnatural would that be? Jiang Qing looked wronged as he begged for mercy. I let go of his hand and said, "Forget it, I'll spare you. I think this little girl isn't bad. Treat her well." Jiang Qing scratched his head with a red face. "I know, big sister." While we were talking and laughing, a voice suddenly came from behind us. "Hey, isn't this Duanmuke?" We turned around and saw that it was none other than LV Sishue. LV Sishue stood there with her arm around Duanmuke's arm. She was followed by several men and women. She walked in front of Duanmuke and looked at him. "I didn't expect to see you here." She turned around and looked at me and Jiang Qing. "Oh, right, and your bitch and dog." Obviously, she was looking for trouble. Jiang Qing was so angry that he wanted to confront her, but I stopped him. Duanmuke glared at her. "You better watch your mouth. What can you do to me if I don't watch my mouth?" LV Sishue looked at Duanmuke with provocative eyes. I saw that Duanmuke was about to lose control, so I stood in front of Duanmuke and looked at LV Sishue. "LV Sishue, we're here to play. We don't want to cause trouble. Let's play on our own. Don't cause unnecessary trouble." I politely negotiated with LV Sishue. Slap. LV Sishue swung her hand and slapped my face. My face burned with pain. Before I could react, Duanmuke hugged me tightly and covered my face. Jiang Qing grabbed LV Sishue's hand. "What are you doing? Looking for trouble?" LV Sishue looked at Duanmuke hugging me and became even angrier. She reached out and picked up the ashtray on the table and was about to throw it at us. At that moment, she suddenly heard Cece's voice. "No. Stop." While LV Sishue was in a daze, Jiang Qing took the opportunity to snatch the ashtray. Cece stood to the side and said to LV Sishue, "Miss, hello. If you're here to have fun, then we welcome you. If you're here to cause trouble, then I'm sorry, but we don't welcome you. If you insist on causing trouble, then we'll have to take measures." LV Sishue glanced at Cece. "And what are you?" Cece's face turned red, and she said firmly, "I'm the person in charge here." Chapter 25. LV Sishue stared at Cece. At this time, a woman came over and whispered something in LV Sishue's ear. LV Sishue turned to Duanmuke and said, "I'll let you go this time, but next time it won't be so simple." Then she turned around and left the bar with the group of people who came with her. After they left, Cece and Jiang Qing came over. I covered my face and leaned against Duanmuke's chest. He gently put his hand on my wound and looked at me with a loving expression. Cece worriedly pulled my hand and said, "Jie, are you okay? It's all my fault. I didn't come earlier." She stood there with a wronged expression, and Jiang Qing hugged her. I took out a mirror from my bag and looked at it. Although it was a little red, it wasn't swollen. Duanmuke's expression became more and more unnatural. I pulled the three of them and said, "What happened tonight? Don't tell Uncle Jiang, and don't let the other Red Minghui know about it. It wasn't a big deal. They didn't do anything to us." Jiang Qing wasn't happy and stood up. "They hit you, and you're still saying it wasn't a big deal? Jie, we have to vent our anger." Duanmuke held me in his arms. "I agree with Xiaoli. It wasn't a big deal. Let's just let it go. We'll be more careful next time." "Brother-in-law, why are you?" "I'm not scared. I just don't want Xiaoli to get hurt. Today, she was hit by LV Sishue. It hurt more than when I hit my own face." I thought about it and decided to take Xiaoli somewhere else to play for 2 days before we go back. If we stay here, who knows what will happen? Duanmuke looked at me. Indeed, I agreed with him. If LV Sishue went back and said something to Wang Meng, it was very likely that he would come looking for trouble with the Red Minghui. It was better for us to leave. After all, LV Sishue was targeting us. I looked at Duanmuke and nodded. "Jie, have you thought about it? We've only been here for 2 days. I still haven't spent enough time with you." Jiang Qing grabbed the wine cup and drained it in one gulp. "Okay, listen to us. When you go back, don't say anything. I'll talk to Uncle Jiang about this. Cece, I'll leave this dumbass to you," I said to Cece with a smile. Don't worry, sister, I'm here. Cece winked at me mischievously. The four of us chatted for a long time in the bar. Since we were leaving the next day, we might as well indulge ourselves today. After Jiangqing sent us home, he went to send Cece. By the time we got home, it was already late at night. Duanmu K and I took a shower and laid on the bed, but we didn't feel sleepy at all. I laid in his arms and thought about all the things that had happened since we came to America. My heart was in a mess. Maybe this was just a trial for us. As I thought about it, I leaned into Duanmu K's embrace. He hugged me tightly and patted my back gently. "Are you asleep?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "I can't sleep." "What are you thinking about?" He stroked my hair. "I'm thinking about the things that happened in the past 2 days." I sighed. Duanmu K turned over and pressed me under his body. He still looked at me with his gentle eyes. He kissed me on the forehead. "I'm sorry for ruining our honeymoon." I hooked my arms around his neck. "It's not your fault. Don't blame yourself." I could see the helplessness in his eyes. I believed that he wanted to give me an unforgettable honeymoon, but I didn't expect it to be ruined. But I have to thank LV Sishua. He looked at my confused face and continued, "I have to thank her for teaching me how to cherish a person." Duanmu K held my face and kissed my lips deeply. I hugged him tightly. I could feel his helplessness and disappointment. At this moment, I just wanted to be by his side quietly. Even if I didn't do anything, it would be enough as long as I could be by his side. Duanmu K raised his head and looked at me affectionately. His eyes were irresistible, and I fell in love with them again. He slowly took off all my clothes, revealing my entire body before him. His warm hands gently stroked every inch of my skin. I hugged him tightly, feeling the tenderness that he brought to me. After tossing and turning for half the night, we finally fell asleep. When I woke up again, it was already noon. Duanmu K was lying on his side next to me, looking at me. I blushed and hid under the blanket. Duanmu K held me in his arms. He held my face out from under the blanket and kissed me. He looked at me with a blissful expression. Morning kiss. I leaned against his chest and listened to his strong heartbeat. Everything was good. At least I had him by my side when I woke up. After we finished packing, we went to the club's hall. Uncle Jiang happened to be there, so we told him that we wanted to leave early. Uncle Jiang asked us why we were in such a hurry to leave. I found an excuse and brushed him off. Uncle Jiang couldn't argue with us, so he agreed. After eating with some of the club's people, Uncle Jiang arranged for Jiangqing to take us to the airport. We bought a flight to Malaysia. It was still early, so we took a detour to the downtown area to buy some clothes and souvenirs. We were going to bring them back to China. About an hour later, we arrived at the airport. It wasn't good to let Jiangqing follow us, so we asked him to go back. He was like a child, pestering us for a long time. In the end, he had no choice but to compromise. He reluctantly left the airport. Duanmu K and I checked in. We sat in the departure lounge and waited for the button to press. We were bored, so we looked at travel brochures and thought about where to go when we arrived in Malaysia. At this time, I looked up and saw an ice cream shop not far from us. I nudged Duanmu K and said, "Xiao K, I want to eat that ice cream. Can you buy one for me?" Duanmu K looked at the ice cream shop I was pointing at. He turned around and rubbed my hair. "Little greedy cat, what flavor do you want?" I made a face at him. "Chocolate." Duanmu K put down the book in his hand and nodded at me. Then he walked straight to the ice cream shop. People were coming and going in the airport. I kept my eyes on Duanmu K's figure. I watched him walk to the shop entrance and say something to the salesperson. Then he turned around and waved at me. I also stood up and waved at him. I accidentally knocked the book off a stool and squatted to pick it up. When I looked at the ice cream shop again, he was gone. I panicked. I looked around but didn't see him. I put the book in my bag and walked to the ice cream shop. I didn't see Duanmu K's shadow either. Chapter 26. I asked the ice cream shop assistant, and he said that a man had come to buy a chocolate ice cream. However, after buying it, he left. He didn't know where he went. I panicked. If he really went somewhere, he should have told me. Just as I was feeling gloomy, my phone rang. I took a look and saw that it was Duan Mukhe's call. After I picked it up, I was very angry. Where did you go? Why didn't you tell me? I waited for Duan Mukhe's answer, but there was no response from the other end of the line. I said hello again. At this time, a man's voice came from the other end of the line. If you want to see your husband, prepare 5 million in cash and wait for my call. I was stunned. Was this a kidnapping? I said to the phone, who are you? Where is Duan Mukhe? Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and prepare the money, the other side said fiercely. Before I could finish my words, the other side hung up. I had no choice but to call Uncle Jiang and tell him what had happened. Uncle Jiang asked me to wait for them at the airport. Not long after, Uncle Jiang brought a few people to the airport. We used the excuse of looking for someone to get a video of the incident. We could clearly see that Duan Mukhe had received a phone call and disappeared from the video. We couldn't see who had taken him away. After investigating the airport, Uncle Jiang brought me back to the club. This wasn't a small matter. It had been 2 days, and I couldn't hide it from both sides' parents. I hesitated for a long time and called Duan Mutachio and Xiaofingya. They were very worried, but Uncle Jiang promised that he would bring Duan Mukhe back. I hadn't had a good rest for 2 days. I held my phone tightly, afraid that I would miss a call. Just as I was about to collapse, my phone suddenly rang. This time, it was a missed call. When I answered, it was the same man's voice. At 1900 hours p.m., bring the ransom. Go to the abandoned factory warehouse at the end of XX Street. You can only bring one person. If you dare to call the police or bring a group of people, you will be dead. After the call ended, I couldn't help but cry. Jiang Qing kept comforting me. Uncle Jiang called my father and quickly transferred 5 million from the headquarters. My father was very worried about me. He was afraid that I would be in danger if I went alone. He wanted someone else to go in my place, but I refused. It was obvious that the other party asked me to go. If I didn't go, Duan Mukhe might really be in danger. When it was almost time, Uncle Jiang helped me pack the suitcase with the money and drove us to the transaction location. On the way, Uncle Jiang told us that he had arranged a group of people nearby. Jiang Qing would go in with me. If there was any danger, Jiang Qing would send a signal and everyone would rush in to save us. When we arrived at the entrance of the factory, we saw that the factory was in ruins. Jiang Qing and I carefully walked in. When we saw the dilapidated warehouse, we looked at each other and pushed the door open. The huge warehouse was empty. I stood in the middle, put down the suitcase with the money, and shouted, "I'm here." After waiting for a while, no one came out. I shouted again. At this time, a few people came out from the innermost part of the warehouse. Among the crowd, I saw Duan Mukhe, who was tied up and blindfolded. Fortunately, it seemed that they didn't make things difficult for Duan Mu, Quebec. He wasn't injured. I breathed a sigh of relief. The man at the front was holding an iron baseball bat. His limbs were covered in tattoos, and he had a big lip ring on his lips. He sat on a broken suitcase and looked at me and Jiang Qing with an evil expression. His people took off Duan Mukhe's blindfold. "Xiao Li." Duan Mukhe shouted at me. The man next to him fiercely punched Duan Mukhe in the stomach. Duan Mukhe fell to the ground. "What are you doing? You said you would guarantee his safety." I was a little anxious and shouted at the man. The man sitting on the suitcase looked at the man, indicating that he should stop. He turned to look at me. "Did you bring the things I asked for?" I pointed at the suitcase on the ground. "It's all here. Hand over the money and hand over the person." The man sneered. "In your current situation, what qualifications do you have to talk terms with me?" I smiled and calmed down. I said to him, "I don't know you, and you probably don't know Duan Mukhe and me. If you were targeting the Red Minghui, then the person you kidnapped should be me, not him." The man raised his eyebrows and looked at me. "Continue. You were hired by someone else. This honeymoon trip with him was very low-key. Besides our family and friends, no one else knew. Duanmu K doesn't know anyone in New York. Besides one person, I can't think of anyone else. Come out. Don't hide, LV Sishue. At this moment, a figure walked out from behind the pillar, behind the man. It was none other than LV Sishue. She looked at us with a perverted smile. I didn't expect you to be so smart. No wonder Duanmu K likes you so much. The tattooed man shook his head at her. I didn't tell you. You can only blame her for being too smart. LV Sishu motioned for him to leave. I've brought you the money. Please let Duanmu K go. I looked at her. I can let him go, but you have to bring me the money. It was obvious that she didn't have good intentions. Jiang Qing grabbed my arm and shook his head at me. He didn't want me to go over. I looked at him and used my eyes to tell him that if anything happened, he had to give Uncle Jiang a signal. I turned and pulled my suitcase towards LV Sishue. Duanmu K kept shaking his head at me, telling me not to come over. I walked towards him step by step. There was only one thought in my mind. I had to save him. When I reached LV Sishue, I put down my suitcase and said, "Here's the money. Can I take him away?" I walked towards Duanmu, Quebec. Wait. She suddenly grabbed my arm. Don't be in such a hurry. Check it first. Several people opened the suitcase and looked through the money. There was nothing wrong with it. They nodded at her. She let go of my arm. I ran towards Duanmu K and untied him. I supported him as we walked past LV Sishue. Jiang Qing saw us coming and greeted us with a smile. Brother-in-law, are you okay? It's a good thing we escaped. Let's go. Jiang Qing put Duanmu K's arm on his shoulder. The two of us supported him as we walked toward the door. Stop. LV Sishue's voice came from behind us. I only allowed you to take him away. I didn't allow you to leave. Chapter 27. We turned around and looked at LV Sishue. Duanmu K stood in front of me and said, I've already given you the money. What else do you want? LV Sishue looked at us and smiled. I haven't played enough yet. How could I let you go so easily? At this time, a group of people came out from all directions and surrounded us. The three of us saw that the situation wasn't good. I signaled to Jiang Qing, who secretly pressed the signal. We were at a disadvantage. In order to wait for Uncle Jiang to bring people to support us, I had to use a delaying tactic. I looked at LV Sishue and asked her, LV Sishue, why do you want to torture us like this? What right do you have to be tortured by me? The only one I want to torture is Duanmu, Quebec. You guys are just sacrificial lambs. LV Sishue raised her eyebrows. What did he do to wrong you? Why would you do this to him? It seemed that she hadn't seen through my plan. I was secretly happy that I could buy some time for Uncle Jiang. LV Sishue raised her arm and pointed at the scar on her wrist. She said fiercely, Did you know? He took my first time. He took my self-esteem. He caused me to lose everything that originally belonged to me. You can't push all the blame to Duanmu, Quebec. He told me that he had sex with you because he was drunk. You think being drunk is a good excuse? I don't know who spread the news about me and him, but the whole school knew that I was a dirty woman. They even tricked me into going to a bar and got me drunk. More than a dozen people took turns on top of me. No matter how I screamed, no one came to save me. Can you understand this kind of feeling? LV Sishue was a little emotional. Her eyes had a trace of tears. Regarding this matter, I really sympathize with you. Duanmu K said softly to her. Put away your sympathy. I don't need it. LV Sishue shouted. Later on, someone in my school reported me, saying that I was a hookup girl outside of school. The school used the excuse of affecting the school's atmosphere to deprive me of the opportunity to study abroad and expelled me. Did you know that I was about to graduate? I studied hard every day for 4 years just to get that diploma. Everything was ruined. It's all because of you, Duanmu K. LV Sishue shouted loudly. She took out a pistol from her bag and pointed it at Duanmu K, but she didn't shoot. LV Sishue, calm down. Don't do anything wrong. Jiang Qing comforted Lu Sishue. What you said is already in the past. Don't dwell on it. This is good for you, and for everyone. LV Sishue sneered and took 2 steps forward. She looked at Duan Muke, then looked at me who was standing next to him. Then she said to Duan Muke, I once really loved you. I once wanted to be with you for the rest of my life, but you weren't even willing to look at me. Do you know how much pain I felt when you broke up with me? It didn't even hurt this much when I slit my wrist. LV Sishue pointed the gun at me. I can see that this woman is the woman you love the most. If I destroy her, will you also feel that kind of heart-wrenching pain? No. Don't be impulsive. If you have something to say, come at me. Don't hurt her. Duan Muke became anxious and stood in front of me. I turned around and stood in front of Duan Muke and looked at LV Sishue. Don't hurt him. Xiaoli, don't cause trouble. She's coming at me. You're fine. Duan Muke pulled me back behind him. I won't. I broke free from his arm and stood in front of him again. LV Sishue saw the 2 of us arguing and completely exploded. Since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. Bang! She shot. While everyone was stunned, I turned around and stood in front of Duanmu, Quebec. The bullet hit my left chest. I seemed to hear the sound of my internal organs exploding. The piercing pain numbed my entire body. I fell headfirst into Duan Muke's arms. Xiaoli. Why are you so stupid? Xiaoli. Duan Muke sat on the ground and hugged me tightly. He pressed his hand on my wound and blood flowed out from between his fingers. Big sis, don't scare me. Dad will be here soon. Hold on. Jiang Qing knelt in front of me with tears in her eyes. I strenuously reached out and touched Duan Muke's cheek. Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw that the thugs had already surrounded us. I forcefully touched his face and strenuously said, Xiaoke, run. My hand slipped and I gradually lost consciousness. I had a very, very long dream. I dreamed that I was floating in the boundless sky. There was no road under my feet. There was no road around me. There was only pure white clouds. I didn't know how long I had been floating, but I felt so tired that I just lay down in the sky. At this time, a cloud floated by. Not far away, there was a person. That familiar figure, that familiar face, that exclusive gaze. I stood up and floated towards him. As I floated, I didn't get any closer to him. I panicked. He waved his hand at me and turned to float further away. I shouted his name loudly, but no sound came out from my throat. I was so sad that I wanted to cry, but there were no tears. I helplessly watched as that figure moved further and further away from me. Suddenly, that figure stopped. He held a gun in his hand and pointed it at me. I forcefully shook my head and begged him not to shoot, but he ignored me and pulled the trigger. The bullet pierced through my body. My body began to bleed, and the blood wouldn't stop. My feet were already dyed red by me, and the sky was dyed red by me. That figure turned and left again. I lay there and screamed with all my might. Suddenly, I woke up with a start. My forehead was covered in sweat. I kept comforting myself in my heart. Fortunately, this was just a dream. It was already late at night. I turned my head and looked around. It turned out that I was in the hospital. It seemed that I had come back from the gates of hell. I struggled to sit up. I saw a person lying next to my bed, sleeping soundly. I touched his soft hair. It couldn't be more familiar. It seemed that before I woke up, Duan Muke had been by my side. Looking at Duan Muke sleeping soundly, I suddenly felt very happy. I didn't know when it started, but he had already occupied my heart. I didn't want to lose him more and more. Even if I could only slowly stay by his side like this, it would be very happy. I gently kissed him on the head, but I didn't expect to wake him up. He stretched slightly. When he opened his eyes, he saw that I was also looking at him. At first, he was stunned. Then, he immediately sat up. He held my hand and said with concern, Xiaoli, you're finally awake. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Chapter 28. Duan Muke sat in front of me and reached out to gently wipe away the sweat on my face. His face was full of affection. Feeling the warmth of his fingers, I finally confirmed that I was still alive. Waves of pain came from my chest, but seeing Duan Muke made this pain nothing. I moved to the side of the bed to make some space. I patted the bed, indicating for Duan Muke to come up. He was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. "This will touch your wound, and you won't be able to rest well." I smiled at him and pulled his arm. He couldn't refuse, so he lay down next to me and carefully hugged me, afraid of touching my wound. I leaned my head against his chest, feeling very happy. Just like before, he gently stroked my hair. "How long have I been asleep?" I raised my head to look at him. "You've been asleep for a few days. While you were unconscious, Uncle Jiang, Jiang Qing, and everyone else were here. They didn't leave even a step." Duan Muke gently kissed my forehead. "How did I sleep for so long?" "After you arrived at the hospital, you were directly sent to the operating room. Because you were shot too close to your heart during the operation, the doctor came out and announced that you were in critical condition several times. I was really afraid that you wouldn't make it. I wouldn't be able to explain it to Mom and Dad, and I definitely wouldn't be able to forgive myself." Duan Muke's eyes reddened. I reached out and gently touched his face. "Silly, aren't I back now?" "Oh, right. What happened after I fainted?" Duan Muke told me in detail what happened after I fainted that day. It turned out that after I fainted, the thugs saw LV Sishua shoot, so they swarmed over. They wanted to beat up Jiang Qing and Duan Mu Quebec. At that time, the door to the warehouse was knocked open. Uncle Jiang led a group of people into the warehouse and blocked LV Sishua and the others inside. The two groups of people started to tear each other apart, and the scene was chaotic. LV Sishua saw that the situation was not good. Just as she was about to escape, she was blocked by Jiang Qing. In a few moves, she was subdued and pinned to the ground. At this time, a lot of police officers came into the warehouse. It turned out that Uncle Jiang had called the police when he arrived. Uncle Jiang told the police everything, and the police took everyone away. Duan Muke took me to a nearby hospital. Just like that, I stayed there for a few days until I woke up today. What about Lu Sishua? Where is she now? She was taken away by the police. They're probably questioning her now. You don't have to worry. Duan Muke hugged me tightly. As long as you're fine, I'm content. This time, I've completely understood that I can't leave you. You know, when you were bleeding and fell into my arms, I was really sad. After you fainted, I thought you. At that time, my mind was blank. When I saw Uncle Jiang and the others coming, I carried you and ran to the hospital. But thank God you're finally back with me. Aren't I fine? Don't worry. I promise I won't run around anymore. I smiled at him. Thank you for letting me know that if I love someone with my heart, Shaoli, please allow me to take care of you for the rest of my life. Duan Muke cupped my face and kissed me deeply on the lips. It was the same familiar taste, the same familiar feeling. Duan Muke looked at me and gently stroked my hair. All right, it's getting late. Be a good girl and sleep for a while. I'll watch you sleep. With that, he moved to get off the bed. Seeing that he was about to run away, I quickly hugged him. In the end, I accidentally touched my wound. Aya. He quickly helped me lie down and reached out to unbutton my shirt. I covered my shirt and looked at him in shock. What are you doing? His face darkened. I just want to see if the wound is bleeding. What are you thinking? Embarrassed, I let go of his hand and let him unbutton my shirt. He looked at it for a while and said, Good, the wound didn't open. Don't move around. Rest. He buttoned my shirt again. I didn't want to let go of his arm. I acted cute and said, I want to sleep with you. Duan Muke shook his head helplessly. All right, don't move around. Of course, don't have any messy thoughts. He lay down next to me and hugged me in his arms. I rested my head on his arm. My arms and legs were draped over his body. What thoughts can I have? It should be you. I rolled my eyes at him. I can't do anything about it. You're lying next to me, and I have a reaction. What tricks can I have? I don't have any tricks. Duan Muke's hands began to roam everywhere. I glared at him. Bastard. Sleep. Amidst the noise, the two of us gradually fell asleep. We slept very peacefully in Duanmukei's arms. The next day, Duanmukei told everyone that I had woken up. Uncle Jiang and Jiang Qing came to the hospital to visit me. Jiang Qing looked at my haggard appearance and cried like a child on the bed. I comforted him for a long time, but the child didn't give me any face. He cried his heart out. I had no choice but to give Duanmukei a look. Duanmukei understood my meaning and found an excuse to drag Jiang Qing out. Only Uncle Jiang and I were left in the room. Uncle Jiang sat next to me and held my hand. Li Er, how are you? Do you feel better? I smiled at Uncle Jiang. Uncle Jiang, I'm much better. You've all worked hard these past few days. I've made you all worry. It's fine. This is what we should do. Uncle Jiang looked at me. All right, Li Er, I received a call from your father. He's already discussed it with Duanmu Tachio. They've decided to let the two of you stop your honeymoon and return to China as soon as possible so that they can arrange for you to recuperate. I thought for a while. Uncle Jiang, I'll talk to Duanmukei about this. He should agree. Don't worry. Li Er, Uncle Jiang feels very sorry for you. We clearly came here to have fun, but we encountered this kind of thing. Uncle Jiang felt very guilty. I held Uncle Jiang's hand. Uncle Jiang, don't say that. You've done enough for us. Besides, this was unexpected. It's not surprising that someone as dark as LV Sishue would do something like this. All right, Uncle Jiang. How are things with LV Sishue and Wang Meng? I contacted Wang Meng and told him about this matter. He was very surprised. He said that he didn't know that LV Sishue had done these things. He also asked LV Sishue why she had a conflict with us. She only said that Duanmukei had bullied her. She didn't say anything else. LV Sishue wanted to frame him, saying that Wang Meng had asked her to do this. Later, he asked me to be a witness to prove that he had nothing to do with this matter. Wang Meng also agreed to join the Red Minghui. LV Sishue has already received the punishment she deserved. Chapter 29. Uncle Jiang wanted me to be a witness, but I refused. After all, the Red Minghui had a lot of influence in the local area. This matter could be big or small, so for the sake of benefits, it was better to find a random reason to sue LV Sishue. Later, I talked with Uncle Jiang about some things related to the Red Minghui branch, and Uncle Jiang went back to work. I stayed in the hospital for another 2 days. The doctor carefully checked my condition and finally confirmed that I could be discharged. These days, Duanmukei had been taking care of me carefully. He told me stories during the day and hugged me to sleep at night. The two of us ate together and walked together. Although the honeymoon wasn't perfect, as long as he was with me, it was enough. After being discharged from the hospital, we returned to the branch and simply packed our luggage. We stayed in the branch for another night, and the next day, we took the plane back to a city. Before we left, Uncle Jiang couldn't see us off because he had something to do, so he arranged for Jiang Qing and Cici to see us off. When we parted, the two of them cried. Those who didn't know would think that we were bullying them. However, we had to leave anyway. After parting with them, reluctantly, we took the plane back. After more than 13 hours of flight, we finally returned to a city. During the whole journey, Duanmukei was worried that I wasn't feeling well. When everyone was sleeping, he still stayed by my side. Finally, we got off the plane and walked out of the airport. We saw a group of people outside the airport to welcome us. At this time, a person walked out of the crowd. It was Xiao Fengya and my mother. When they saw me and Duanmukei, they immediately greeted us. Xiao Fengya worriedly held my hand and asked me about my physical condition. When my mother saw my haggard appearance, she couldn't stop her tears from flowing down. I didn't expect that they would come to pick us up in person. We got in the car and returned to Duanmu's house. Before we came back, my parents and Duanmukei's parents had discussed that when we came back, we would directly go back to the Duanmu's house. My parents would stay with me at the Duanmu's house for a few days until I recovered. When I returned home and looked at the familiar door, I felt at ease. I also remembered the first time I entered this door. I had the mentality of letting nature take its course, and even a little rebellious. But now it was different. This was just like my own home. It was a home that made me happy. When we entered the door, Duan Mutachio and my father were already waiting for us in the living room. When they saw us, they asked about us with concern. After we chatted for a while, Duan Mutachio took my father and Duan Mu K to the study. Xiao Fengya and my mother helped me up the stairs and let me lie down in the room to rest. As soon as I walked up the stairs, I saw Yu Xin standing at the end of the stairs, looking at me with a serious face. But I was already used to it. I didn't expect her to like me that much. Perhaps she would even laugh at me in her heart when she saw my injured appearance. We entered the bedroom that Duan Mu K and I shared. The room was spotless. Xiao Fengya would arrange for the housekeeper to clean it every day. I changed into my pajamas and lay down. Xiao Fengya and my mother packed the clothes while chatting with me. They talked about the things that had happened in the United States. I wanted to get up and help them, but they pressed me down on the bed and didn't let me move. I had no choice but to lie down and tell them what had happened in the United States. When they heard about LV Sishue, they were shocked. I guessed that they had the same thought as me. No one would have thought that a woman could have such a bad heart. However, when it came to LV Sishue, Xiao Fengya thought for a long time and remembered that there was indeed such a person. At that time, she was very angry. She said that her parents had threatened Duan Mutachio. We chatted for a while. When it was almost time for bed, Xiao Fengya and my mother returned to their respective rooms. Duan Mu K hadn't returned yet. I stared at the desk in a daze. Suddenly, I remembered that Duan Mu K had written something there. When he saw me, he immediately hid it. Out of curiosity, I got out of bed and walked to the desk, rummaging through the drawers. Sure enough, in the corner of the bottom drawer, I found a palm-sized notebook. According to its hidden position, it should be something important to Duan Mu, Quebec. After hesitating for a long time, I decided to open it and take a peek. I opened the first page of the diary. It was a wedding photo of me and Duan Mu, Quebec. Although we weren't very willing when we took the photo, looking at it now, it was still pretty good. At the bottom of the photo, there was a line of words, "Only one person, Duan Mu, Quebec." I smiled and continued to flip through the pages. It seemed that Duan Mu K had a habit of keeping a diary. After reading the first few pages, I couldn't help but laugh. The first few pages were about how he had just met me, and how he felt that I was a good and quiet person. However, he was very against this kind of binding marriage, so he was always against me. I thought to myself that he was quite self-aware. As I flipped through the next few pages, my heart became more and more moved. The contents of the diary, from the day he played tricks on me to the day we returned to my house, were all the happy moments we had together. In the diary, he wrote, "I had the mentality of letting nature take its course, but when I kissed her for the first time, I discovered that I actually fell in love with her. Seeing her under my body, without fear in her eyes, I really wanted to possess her, not just her body, but also her heart. I couldn't tolerate other people of the opposite sex appearing in her eyes. Her eyes could only contain me. I closed the diary and held it against my chest. It turned out that he had already fallen in love with me at that time. Shaoli, I'm back." Duan Mu K's voice came from the door. I suddenly came back to my senses and wanted to hide the diary. However, I didn't have time to hide it. The moment he pushed the door open, he saw the diary in my hand. Duan Mu K looked at me with an astonished face. "Xiao Li, what are you doing?" Then he quickly walked in front of me and snatched the diary from my hand. Then he hid it behind his back. His face was extremely red. He turned his head and didn't dare to look at me. I stared at him blankly. His eyes looked around randomly. After thinking for a while, he turned his head and looked at me. In a low voice, he said, "You saw it all?" I covered my mouth and looked at him laughing. I didn't expect that his face would turn even redder. Seeing his cute appearance, I couldn't help but hug him and kiss him deeply on the lips. I looked at his blank expression and couldn't help but laugh. Duan Muke pouted and asked, "Why are you laughing so happily? You peeked at my diary." I leaned against Duan Muke's chest. He hugged me tightly and stroked my hair. I listened to his heartbeat and said softly, "Thank you. Thank you for choosing me." Duan Muke buried his head in my shoulder. Some feelings are better expressed. I was very happy. Duan Muke suddenly hugged me and gently stroked my hair. "It's good that I can hold you in my arms like this. Right now, I'm really scared of losing you. So don't leave me, okay? Just stay in my arms like this. I don't care what happens, as long as you don't leave." It might have been an illusion, but I felt as if Duan Muke's voice was choked with sobs when he said that. I hugged him tightly. No matter what, he was the only one in my heart. I didn't want to lose him. I just wanted to be with him forever. The two of us leaned against the rose pond and talked about the things that had happened during our trip to America. From a distance, we saw Yu Xin walking towards us. She stopped in front of us and looked at me. Then she turned to Duan Muke and said gently, "Brother Duanmu, Uncle wants to talk to you about something. He wants you to go to the study now." Duan Muke looked at Yu Xin, then turned to me. He gently stroked my face and said, "Shaoli, Dad wants to talk to me. I'm going there now. Don't stay for too long. Go back and wait for me." Then he took off his jacket and put it on me. He affectionately kissed my forehead. "Put it on. Be careful not to catch a cold." I waved at him and signaled for him to hurry. He nodded and walked into the room. Yu Xin and I were left alone. Yu Xin watched Duan Muke turn to look at me after he entered the room. Her gentle expression disappeared, replaced by a cold and serious one. She stood there and looked at me with hatred in her eyes. "You're really lucky." After a long time, she said those words. It felt as if she had squeezed them out from the roots of her teeth. I looked at her with a puzzled expression. "What did you say?" Yu Xin sighed and crossed her arms in front of her chest. She stood in front of me with a serious expression and said, "I thought that bitch Lu Sishua would be able to help me deal with you. I didn't expect that she would not only fail, but also get herself involved." I stood up and looked at Yu Xin angrily. "Did you make her do those things?" Yu Xin nodded at me, her face full of disdain. My head was in a mess. I turned to Yu Xin and said, "Are you crazy? Don't you know that you almost killed Xiaoke?" Yu Xin sneered and glared at me. "That's right. I arranged all those things. After you left, I learned about your itinerary from Uncle Duanmu. I called LV Sishua and told her about you. Do you know how stupid she is? When she heard that Duan Muke was going, she naively wanted to mend her relationship with him. But when she heard that the two of you were going on a honeymoon, she hated the two of you very much. I took advantage of this. You arranged everything too? I was very surprised." "That's right. She's so stupid. How could she have thought of such a perfect plan? Of course, I taught her. So why do you think Duan Muke wasn't injured and you were the only one injured? The plan was flawless. If it wasn't for her not being able to kill you and your Red Minghue's reinforcements coming too quickly, do you think you would still be standing here talking to me? Don't joke around." Yu Xin glared at me with disdain. I couldn't imagine that everything that happened in America was planned by Yu Xin. I suddenly thought of something and said to her, "Was Wang Meng part of your plan?" If Wang Meng was also one of LV Sishua's people, then it was very likely that his entering the Red Minghui would bring trouble to our branch. So I asked Yu Xin, "Who is he?" "I don't know him," Yu Xin impatiently replied. My heart calmed down a bit. Luckily, Wang Meng didn't know her. Looking at her arrogant appearance, I couldn't bear it anymore. I said to her, "Yu Xin, don't be happy too early. LV Sishua was taken away by the police. Don't worry, it won't be long before she give you away." Chapter 31. Yu Xin laughed again. She looked at me and said, "Rat me out? You really didn't think that I would keep that B*** alive, did you?" A loser shouldn't live in this world. Not long after she went in, I secretly sent someone to get rid of her. My heart trembled as I looked at you, Xin. How could a woman with such a pure appearance be so evil on the inside? I suddenly felt uncomfortable in my stomach, as if I was having a cramp. I didn't want to talk to her anymore, so I ignored her and walked past her. I prepared to return to my room. Duanmuke was still waiting for me. If you don't leave him, don't blame me for taking action, Xin said from behind me. I didn't answer her and walked straight back to my room. When I returned to my room, I lay on the bed. My entire body felt very uncomfortable. My stomach felt like it was cramping, and it was so painful that I felt like I was going to faint. I curled up into a ball, and my forehead was covered in sweat. Suddenly, I felt nauseous. I hurriedly got off the bed and ran to the bathroom to vomit. My legs felt weak, and I didn't have any strength left. I sat on the floor and leaned over the toilet to vomit. At that moment, I heard the bedroom door open. I struggled to turn my head and saw Duanmuke walking past the bathroom door. "I'm back," he shouted. "Shaoli, where are you?" He didn't see me lying in the bathroom. I opened my mouth and tried my best to make a weak sound. Shaoke, I'm here." Suddenly, Duanmuke appeared at the bathroom door. When I saw him, I felt less nervous. I slowly closed my eyes and my consciousness blurred. However, I could feel Duanmuke hugging me tightly. I smelled his scent and heard his familiar heartbeat. I listened to him call out to me again and again. Gradually, I couldn't hear anything. When I woke up, it was already daytime. I was sent to the hospital with an 4 drip in my hand. My parents, Duanmuke, and Xin were all in the room. A doctor sat next to me, flipping through a pile of documents. No one spoke. I opened my eyes in a daze and stretched out my hand. Everyone saw that I was awake and gathered around. Duanmuke took my hand and kissed it. It seemed that I had made everyone worried again. After a while, the doctor closed the documents and said to everyone, "I've taken a quick look at the report. It's nothing serious. It's just that her stomach isn't good and she doesn't eat much. When she goes back, she has to eat regularly. Even if she doesn't want to eat, she has to think about the baby in her belly." What? We were all stunned by the doctor's words. I thought to myself, what baby? Am I pregnant? The doctor calmly said, "Yes, she's pregnant. It's not even 4 weeks. It's normal that she doesn't feel anything. She'll stay in the hospital for a while longer. Remember, take care of the baby and rest well." Then the doctor left. Duanmuke sat next to my bed and held my hand tightly. He kissed my forehead and said softly, "Shaoli, it's great. We have a baby." I smiled at him and touched his face. This little thing came unexpectedly, but I would welcome him with all my heart. Duanmutachio, Xiaofengya, and my parents were all very excited. It seemed that they also hoped that this little life would come to them soon. I glanced at Xin. Her expression was still so serious. She hadn't thought that I would be pregnant. It was getting late. Duanmuke sent everyone back, leaving him alone to accompany me. At night, Duanmuke lay next to me. I leaned against his chest and gently touched my belly. I couldn't believe it. There was a little life in my belly. He hugged me and looked at me blankly as I touched my belly. He smiled and kissed my face. "Shaoli, are you scared?" He seemed to know what I was thinking. I shook my head and looked up at him. "I just feel that it's unbelievable. There's a little life in my belly, and he'll come out to meet us in 10 months. "Yeah, then I'll be the father and you'll be the mother. Do you want a daughter or a son?" I asked him softly. Duanmuke hugged me. "It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. As long as it's ours, I'll like it." I nodded in his arms. "As long as it's our child, it doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl." We stayed in the hospital for 2 days and did a systematic checkup. After everything was normal, we were discharged. When we returned home, Xiaofengya and my mother cooked a sumptuous lunch. There were all kinds of supplementary dishes. I couldn't refuse, so I ate them in big bites. Finally, it was the day of Duanmuke's birthday party. When I opened my eyes in the morning, I saw Duanmu-K lying next to me and gently touching my face. I smiled and looked at him. I hugged his neck and kissed his lips. Happy birthday, hubby. Duanmu-K hugged me happily. Thank you. You finally called me hubby. Thank you, wifey. I lifted my head and looked at him with an aggrieved face. I prepared a birthday present for you, but I can't give it to you now. He looked at me with a surprised expression. What kind of gift can't you give me even though you've already prepared it? I shyly hid in his arms. I was too embarrassed to tell him about the present I'd prepared. Duanmu-K looked at my shy face and was even more worried. What present is it? I lay on his chest and whispered, Do you remember that day in the bathroom? I owe you a compensation, right? Duanmu-K thought for a while and suddenly remembered something. I remember now. It's true. My face grew redder, and I didn't dare to raise my head to look at him. In a low voice, I said, Originally, I wanted to do what I didn't do that day, do it. I felt like my face was so hot that I could fry vegetables. Duanmu-K hugged me, and with a lewd smile on his face said to me, Okay, come. As he said that, his hands began to undress me. I hit his hand, and he pulled back. I glared at him and said, You're messing around. Be careful not to touch my baby. I gently touched his belly. The expression on Duanmu-K's face instantly darkened. He rubbed my stomach and said in an extremely aggrieved tone, Little thing, it's all because of you that Papa can't do the things he likes to do. Little thing, when you come out, Papa's going to spank you. Finished speaking, he kissed my stomach. Looking at his tender face, I felt very happy. I stroked his hair and said, Silly, when he comes into this world, you won't be able to spank him. Chapter 32. Duanmu-K looked up at me and said, Of course. He's my baby. How could I bear to hit him? He hugged me and said, I don't care what kind of birthday present you prepare for me. I only care that you're the one who's by my side. Plus, you've already given me the best birthday present. It's our child. I hope the baby will grow up quickly and come to this world soon. I nodded as I lay in his arms. As long as he was by my side, I felt very satisfied. The whole family was busy preparing for Duanmu-K's birthday party. Because I was a special person, the whole family didn't allow me to do any work. They only asked me to sit or lie down. I was really bored, so I went to the garden to look at the pool of roses. The afternoon sun was warm. I went to the rattan chair across from the rose pool and made some simple arrangements. I spread out a blanket and brought a pillow. Then I lay on the chair and closed my eyes to smell the fragrance of the flowers. The rattan chair had a sunshade at the top, so I wouldn't have to worry about being exposed to the sun. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard footsteps approaching me. However, it was obvious that the footsteps were deliberately soft. I opened my eyes and looked up. I saw a person walking towards me. It turned out to be Han Hao. I sat up from the rattan chair. When he saw me get up, he didn't pretend to be soft anymore. He rubbed his head and smiled at me. Haha, you're awake. Did I wake you up? He walked up to me awkwardly. I pointed at the flower pool opposite me and asked him to sit down. After he sat down, I looked at him. He was still the same sunny and handsome guy. I smiled at him. You must be here for the party. It's still early. He nodded. Father said that he would come early to see if there was anything he could help with. Why are you here? They didn't let me help. I didn't know where to stay. So, I came here to sleep. I made a face at him. Han Hao suddenly thought of something and asked, I heard about what happened during your honeymoon. It must have been hard on you. You must have suffered a lot. Are you feeling better now? I nodded. I've almost recovered. It's not perfect, but if there's a chance in the future, we can go on vacation somewhere else. Han Hao stared blankly for a moment. Then he lowered his head and quietly asked, You and him, how are things going? Han Hao looked up at me, his eyes waiting for the answer he was looking forward to. I understood what Han Hao meant. I smiled and said, Yeah, it's good. He loves me a lot. A hint of disappointment flashed through Han Hao's eyes. He was silent for a few seconds, then nodded and said, "Yes, very good, very good." Looking at Han Hao, I suddenly felt that my feelings for him were not as strong as before. Instead, I felt that he was like a confidant who could sit face to face and have a heart-to-heart talk. It was very comfortable, and he could also understand what I wanted to express. "Wifey, you're here. I've been looking for you for a long time." While we were both silent, Duanmukei's voice came. He had already walked in front of us. He first looked at me, then at Han Hao. "Han Hao, when did you come? Why didn't you tell me?" After saying that, Duanmukei sat beside me and hugged me in his arms. Han Hao saw all of this, and I suddenly felt that his expression wasn't very natural. However, he still maintained a smile and said to Duanmukei, "I came with my father. We were just wandering around when I saw Shaoli here, so I came to say hello." Duanmukei smiled. "So that's what happened. What did you talk about? Bring me along." His words were full of provocation. I could see that Duanmukei was a little jealous, so I had no choice but to say to Duanmukei, "Why would I bring you along? Han Hao and I were talking about what happened in America." Duanmukei had a doubtful expression. "Oh, so you were talking about that. It's all in the past. Let's not talk about it. Let's talk about the present." We both looked at him with a puzzled expression. "About what? You haven't told Han Hao yet? I thought you told him." Duanmukei hugged me even tighter. "What is it?" I also had a puzzled expression. I didn't know what he was talking about. Duanmukei looked at Han Hao and said, "Han Hao, I thought my wife told you. Turns out she didn't. Let me tell you, Shaoli is pregnant. I'm going to be a father." Duanmukei's face was full of happiness, and his whole body emitted a happy aura. Han Hao's expression wasn't as natural. His smile was even more stiff. He smiled at us and said, "That's great. Congratulations. How long has it been?" I rubbed my belly and said, "Almost 4 weeks." "That's great." Han Hao looked at me and then said to Duanmukei, "I'm going to go in and see if there's anything I can help with. Tell Shaoli to go in early. It's not good to be exposed to the wind." Duanmukei nodded and waved at him. Watching Han Hao's back disappear into the distance, I didn't know why, but I felt very sad. Duanmukei still hadn't let go of his arm around me. I struggled a bit, and he hugged me even tighter. He looked at me with an unhappy expression. He said to me angrily, "What?" I looked at him and touched his face. "Why do I feel like you're always hostile towards Han Hao?" He pursed his lips and said, "How can I not be hostile? He likes you, after all. Anyway, when I see him with you, I'm not happy." I smiled and looked at him. "Idiot, aren't I standing right next to you? Don't think too much. Han Hao and I are just good friends. I know. I just care about you too much." Duanmukei hugged me tightly in his arms. "I can't tolerate anyone taking you away from me. You are mine." I gently kissed Duanmukei's forehead. Actually, I was just like him. I was afraid of losing him. As long as the two of us could be happy together, it was enough. Duanmukei looked up at me. He touched my face and said, "Let's go in." Chapter 33. Seeing the whole family in the living room, I felt very shy. I whispered to Duanmukei, "Hurry up and put me down. Everyone is watching." "I'm not going to put you down." He rolled his eyes at me, then looked up at everyone. "Mom, Dad, thank you for your hard work. I have to take Shaoli back to her room first. I'll come down later." Then Duanmukei carried me upstairs. When we reached the top of the stairs, we saw Xin standing there, looking at us with a serious expression. It felt like her eyes were about to spit fire. Duanmukei walked in front of Xin and suddenly stopped. He said to her, "Xin, you're just in time. Come with me." Then he carried me into our room. I turned around and saw that Xin's face was red. After we entered the room, Duanmukei put me on the bed and gently covered me with a blanket. He then poured me a glass of water. After I drank it, he took the glass away. Xin stood at the door, watching Duanmukei's busy figure. Her eyes were filled with tenderness. But when she saw me, her expression became especially cold. Duanmu pointed at the stool by the dressing table, indicating for her to sit. Uxin thought for a moment, then walked in and sat on the chair looking at him. Duanmu pulled out 2 gift boxes from the bottom of the wardrobe. One was pink and the other was white. Duanmu handed the white box to Uxin. Then he handed the pink box to me and carefully opened it. Inside the box was a pink dress. Duanmu took out the dress. It was a pink spaghetti strap evening gown. The style and color were all my favorite. I gently touched the dress. It was so beautiful that I didn't even want to wear it. Duanmu looked at my infatuated face and rubbed my head. What do you think? Do you like it? I nodded vigorously. It's beautiful. The style and color are all my favorites. I touched the jewels on the dress. This dress must have been very expensive. The price is not the point. The point is that this dress is custom-made and is one of a kind in the world. Duanmu said proudly. The most important thing is that the designer of this dress is an internationally renowned designer. His work can be auctioned for more than 500,000 yuan. Gosh, that's hard to book. I looked up at him. That's for sure. But your handsome husband happened to be his university classmate and best friend. So he made my appointment in advance and created it quickly. What do you think? Isn't your husband awesome? How are you going to reward me? Duanmu brought his face close to mine. I kissed him lightly on the lips. Awesome. Thank you for giving me such a beautiful dress. Then you have to wear it tonight. I want you to be the most beautiful person in the room. Duanmu gently rubbed my head. At this time, Uxin lowered her head and walked towards the door. Duanmu turned around and saw her. Uxin, where are you going? Duanmu shouted. Uxin stopped in her tracks, but didn't turn around. I'm going back, she said with her head lowered. Duanmu glanced at her gift box, but didn't open it. He stood up and said, open it first and see if it fits. No need. I'll go back and see it myself. She turned to leave. Duanmu walked to her side and grabbed Uxin's arm. You should open it and see. If it doesn't fit, it's not too late to change it now. Uxin didn't shake off Duanmu's arm. Duanmu took the gift box from Uxin's hand and placed it on the dressing table. He slowly opened it. Inside was a black dress. I glanced at the label. It was from Gucci. The style was very similar to what Uxin often wore. Uxin looked at the dress with a shocked expression. Then she said to Duanmu, Brother Duanmu, is this what you want me to wear to the party tonight? Duanmu suddenly froze. Then he rubbed his head and said to Uxin apologetically, I'm sorry, Xn. I didn't think about the dress for the party, so I'm sorry. Hearing Duanmu apologize to Uxin, I frowned. Uxin sighed and put the dress back into the box. Then she looked at me and said to Duanmu, what's the meaning of this dress? Duanmu explained, I promised to buy it for you on your birthday last time, but I was too busy and forgot. I just happened to see it when I went out to work today, so I bought it. But I really didn't think about the dress for the party. I'm sorry. Hearing Duanmu apologize again, I wasn't happy. I stood next to Duanmu and held his arm. Looking at him, I said, you didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing to her? Duanmu was just about to say something when Uxin interrupted. She's right, you don't need to apologize to me. As long as it's something you buy for me, I'll like it. After she finished speaking, she took the gift box and walked out of the room. Watching Uxin's figure disappear, Duanmu turned to me and asked, what's wrong with Xin? In the past, when I gave her presents, she was very happy. Why is she so cold today? I rolled my eyes at him. It must be because you bought me a dress and only bought her a dress. She doesn't think it's fair. He looked at me with a puzzled expression. What's unfair about her? You're my wife, and she's just my little sister. What's so unfair about it? I looked at him and sighed. Okay, don't think about it. Go and do your work. Mom and Dad are waiting. Duanmu kissed me and left. I lay on the bed, and Uxian's cold face appeared in my mind. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. I sat up. "Please come in." The door opened, and Uxian came in. She was wearing the dress that Duanmu K had given her. She stood in front of me and looked at me. "Does it look good?" I picked up the pillow next to me and held it against my belly. "Why did you come here?" Uxian sat on the edge of my bed and put her hand on my belly. She looked at me and said, "I warned you a long time ago not to let him fall in love with you. The more he loves you, the more I hate you. But you didn't listen. Now you're pregnant with his child. What right do you have to be pregnant with his child?" I was afraid that she would hurt the child in my belly. In order to calm her down, I stood still and said, "Uxian, if you hurt me and the child in my belly, do you think Duanmu K will let you go?" Uxian smiled and stood up. With her back to me, she said, "Cold Glaze, you'd better not touch my bottom line again. Don't wait until I can't control myself. I don't know what crazy things I'll do. At that time, not only you and your child, but even your parents will be affected." Chapter 34. Uxian turned and walked out of the room. I didn't know why, but I suddenly felt very scared. I stroked my belly. No matter what, I had to protect my child. At night, the birthday party was about to start. I stood by the window and looked outside. The lawn behind the house was beautifully decorated. Many people had already arrived. There were some Kurosawa executives. Duan Mutachio and my father were chatting enthusiastically with them. They were probably discussing business matters. Xiao Fengya and my mother were receiving the guests. Uxian was wearing the dress that Duanmu K had given her. She was holding a wine glass and standing next to a tree in the corner. I turned around and saw the dress that Duanmu K had given me lying on the bed. Under the light, the diamonds on the dress were very dazzling. I picked up the dress and put it on. After tidying it up a little, I looked at myself in the mirror. The light pink dress looked especially fair against my skin. My long hair was simply draped over my back. Because I was pregnant, I couldn't put on makeup. But without makeup, I looked more natural than if I put on makeup. I was completely different from when I had first married him. I was now exuding happiness. I was no longer as cold as before. Just as I was staring blankly at the mirror, the door to the room was pushed open. Duanmu K stood at the door in a black suit. He looked as handsome as he had on his wedding day. He smiled at me and walked towards me. He walked up behind me and hugged me from behind. He rested his head on my shoulder and looked at me in the mirror. "Wifey, you're so beautiful," he said softly. Then he kissed my neck deeply. I blushed and looked at him. "You're so handsome today." Duanmu K looked up at me and said mischievously, "I'm handsome every day." He reached out and touched my belly. "Do you feel uncomfortable?" he asked with concern. I shook my head. "No, I can take it." He hugged me tightly. "Okay, if you really feel uncomfortable, remember to tell me." I smiled. "Yeah, let's go." He suddenly flipped me over, his face inching closer to mine. "Let me kiss you again." Then he pressed his lips against mine. I hugged him and felt the warmth he gave me. It was almost time for the party to start. I held on to Duanmu K's arm and we walked out of the room. When we reached the staircase, the entire living room was filled with people. They were all here to celebrate Duanmu, Quebec. I didn't know who shouted, but everyone lifted their heads to look at us. The entire living room was boiling with excitement. Duanmu K and I exchanged glances. Then I grabbed his arm and walked toward the others. We waved to everyone one by one, and I could hear some of the girls below screaming. "Wow! Look! The woman next to Duanmu K is wearing a beautiful dress." Yeah, I wonder where she bought it. Let's go and ask later. It's so beautiful. I love it." Hearing the praises from below, Duanmu K leaned over and whispered in my ear, "See? Your husband has good taste." I covered my mouth and smiled. Okay. You have good taste." Seeing me smile, he became anxious. It's obviously very good, okay? All right, I said to him seriously. Don't make a scene. Everybody's watching. Duanmuke glanced at everyone. Seeing everyone's surprised expressions, he fixed his collar and led me to the center of the living room with a serious face. Duanmuke stood in front of the microphone. The people around us instantly quieted down. He said, "Thank you very much for coming to my home for my birthday party. Thank you." Duanmuke bowed, and the audience applauded. He raised his head and continued, "This year's birthday is the most special one I've ever had. First of all, I would like to thank my parents for giving birth to me 28 years ago." Then he bowed to Duanmutachio and Xiaofengya. Duanmutachio and Xiaofengya nodded. Xiaofengya quietly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. The audience applauded again. Secondly, I would like to thank my parents and my wife, Cold Glaze's parents. Both parents helped me arrange this marriage. Although I rejected it at first, when I really got to know my wife, I understood the good intentions of both parents. Thank you. Duanmuke bowed to both parents again, and the living room was filled with applause again. Third of all, I would like to thank my wife, Cold Glaze, for never leaving me. I would also like to thank her for everything she did for me when I was in danger. Duanmuke turned to look at me. Xiaoli, thank you for your hard work. We'll have to spend the next few days nurturing our child. Duanmuke hugged me in his arms and kissed my forehead. Thunderous applause came from below the stage. He turned to face everyone and said, "Finally, I would like to thank everyone once again for their love and care for me. Duanmu, Quebec. I hope everyone can eat and drink well today. Thank you." The audience cheered. Next, it was time for everyone to have fun. Because of my physical condition, I couldn't accompany Duanmuke to toast everyone. He arranged for me to sit on the sofa in the corner of the living room. He kissed me and turned to leave, but I pulled him back. Duanmuke turned and looked at me with a strange expression. "Wifey, what's wrong? How much are you going to drink today?" I looked at him with a smirk. This was a very meaningful question. I wanted to see how he would answer. Duanmuke thought for a while, then laughed and said to me, "Wifey, just a little. I promise I won't drink too much." I stroked his hair and looked at him acting cute. "I'm just teasing you. Go play. Have fun." He nodded. "Okay, I got it. If you're tired, go upstairs early. Be careful." Then he waved his hand and went to find his brothers. Not long after Duanmuke left, a few women gathered around me. They stared at me excitedly. I didn't know them, so I stared back. After a long time, a woman suddenly said to me, "Where did you buy that dress? It's so beautiful." I thought about it and realized it was one of the girls who had complimented my dress earlier. I smiled and said, "This dress is custom-made. It's impossible to buy it outside." Another girl was very disappointed. "Ah, so that's how it is." Sigh, I got excited for nothing. "But I really like this dress." The girl next to her said, Yes. It's really beautiful." I looked at their expressions, but I felt like I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I just looked at them with a silly smile. While we were happily chatting, Uxin walked over to us. She stood behind the girls and stared at me. She linked arms with us and said, "Do you think trash like you deserve to wear this dress?" Chapter 35. The girls turned around and saw that it was Uxin, then turned back around. One of them held a glass of wine and said arrogantly, "I was wondering who it was. So it's Duanmuke's adopted daughter." Uxin stood there and glared at her. "You don't have the right to talk like that here." The girl stood up and looked at Uxin angrily. "What do you mean?" The girls next to them pulled them back, afraid that they would fight. The girl angrily said to Uxin, "Who do you think you are? Today is young Master K's birthday party. Everyone is wearing a dress. Look at what you're wearing. Are you going to respect your beloved young Master K like this?" Uxin's face turned ugly. She took a step forward and reached out to hit the girl. I stepped forward and grabbed her arm. She turned around and looked at me, her face full of anger. The girls were also scared and sat there motionless, looking at us. I glanced at the girl and gestured for her to stop talking. Then, I turned to look at Yu Xian. She flung my hand away and was about to leave when I pulled her arm. Wait a minute. Yu Xian turned around and looked at me. What do you want? I turned to the girl who provoked her and said, I think you might have misunderstood. Yu Xian's dress was given to her by Duanmu, Quebec. Yu Xian felt that it was very important, so she wore it to the party. The girls seemed to understand something and nodded in unison. I turned back to Yu Xian and smiled at her. She glared at me and shook off my hand again. Don't think I'll appreciate what you did. Then she turned around and left. I looked at her back with an indescribable feeling in my heart. I sat back down in my seat. The girls didn't leave either. The girl who had a conflict with Yu Xian patted her chest and said that Yu Xian is still as annoying as before. I looked at her in confusion. Why do you say that? A quiet girl next to her told her what had happened. It turned out that Duanmu K and Yu Xian used to be classmates in the same high school as them. That school was an elite school in a city. According to Yu Xian's identity, she was not qualified to enter that school, but Duanmu K asked his parents to arrange for Yu Xian to go to school with him. When he was in high school, Duanmu K was very popular. Many girls in the school chased after him. However, as long as a girl approached Duanmu K, she would be stopped by Yu Xian. She even threatened those girls who wanted to pursue Duanmu, Quebec. Some of the girls couldn't stand Yu Xian's threats and had to give up their feelings for Duanmu, Quebec. However, some of them didn't give up and continued to oppose Yu Xian throughout their high school life. Of course, one of them was the girl who had a conflict with Yu Xian. I looked at them and asked curiously, did you know that Yu Xian likes Duanmu K? One of the girls said, at that time, the whole school knew because she threatened one of our good sisters. We took advantage of the time when she wasn't in the classroom and threw everything in her bag to the ground. Her bag was filled with photos of Duanmu, Quebec. There was also a diary in it. She wrote how good Duanmu K was to her. When she came back and saw it, she went crazy. We were all scared. Later, she took a leave of absence for a while. When she came back, she changed classes. Does Duanmu K know about this? I glanced at Duanmu K, who was busy socializing not far from us. At that time, young Master K didn't know. However, I'm not sure if he knew about it later. After all, Yu Xian was a very solitary person in our school. She didn't have any good friends. Her looks were average, and no one pursued her. Gradually, that matter was forgotten. I thought about it. Yu Xian's solitary personality was related to her growth. She probably felt inferior from the beginning. The girls were still gossiping, and I couldn't interrupt them. I just sat there and listened to them, laughing and accompanying them. At this moment, Duanmu K walked towards us with a wine glass in his hand. He walked behind the girls and said with a smile, "Beautiful ladies, is it convenient for you to give me a chance to discuss some matters with my wife?" The girls nodded and left. Duanmu K sat across from me, leaning back in his chair with a tired face. My heart ached when I saw his tired face. I said softly, "You've worked hard." He looked at me and smiled. "It's not hard at all. No matter how hard it is, it doesn't feel hard when I see you." I covered my mouth and laughed. "You're so tired, but you still have a glib tongue. We'll have to go and greet you later." He nodded helplessly and leaned back in his chair with his eyes closed. Seeing that he was really tired, I walked behind him and gently pressed his shoulder. He opened his eyes and looked at me, then closed them again. He looked like he was enjoying it. At this time, Duanmu Tachio brought an older man to stand in front of us. The man looked at me and pressed Duanmu K's shoulder. He smiled and said to Duanmu Tachio, "Li Xiong, look at how happy your son and daughter-in-law are. When I look at them, I think of you and Xiaoya. You two used to love each other so much." Hearing the man's words, I blushed and stopped what I was doing. Duanmu K opened his eyes and saw Duanmu Tachio and the man. He immediately stood up. "Hello, Uncle Zhang." The man nodded. "Xiao K, you have a good wife." You should cherish her. Then, Duan Tachio left with the man. Looking at their departing figures, I suspiciously asked Duan Muke, "Who was that man?" "That man is my father's business partner. They've been working together for a long time." I suddenly remembered the conversation I had with those people about UXIN. I curiously asked Duan Muke, "Did you and UXIN go to the same high school?" Duan Muke looked at me. "Yeah. How did you know?" I held his arm and whispered in his ear, "Did you know that UXIN liked you from that time?" Duan Muke suddenly lowered his head. He didn't say anything. I quietly looked at him. "Don't think too much. I'm not angry." Duan Muke hugged me in his arms and whispered, "I know. Her feelings for me are very special. I know it's the feeling of liking someone. She hasn't changed since high school." He looked at me and continued, "But now, my heart only has you. There's no room for anyone else. No matter how good she is to me, she's just a little sister. She'll never be the one I love." I stroked his face. "How could I not understand your feelings for me? But do you know what UXIN did to those girls to monopolize you?" Chapter 36. Duan Muke looked at me and touched my face. "I know. They've all told me that although she's a little extreme, she has a kind heart. I'm sure of that." After hearing Duan Muke's words, I decided not to talk about it anymore. Today was his birthday, and I shouldn't make him unhappy. Besides, I didn't have enough evidence to prove that UXIN was a threat to me. I hugged Duan Muke and leaned against his chest. Okay. Let's not talk about this anymore." Xiao Fengya walked toward us. We let go of her and stood there, embarrassed. We greeted Xiao Fengya. Xiao Fengya saw us and smiled. "Oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet." Duan Muke said awkwardly, "Mom, don't make fun of us." Xiao Fengya said, "I'm just teasing you. Don't take it seriously. Come with me. Your father wants to talk about a cooperation." She turned to look at me. "Xiaoli, do you feel uncomfortable? Do you want to go upstairs and rest?" "Mom, I'm fine. You guys go ahead. I'm going out for a walk." I smiled and waved at her. "Okay. Let's go, K-er." Then, Xiao Fengya left with Duanmu Quebec. From a distance, I saw a few older people surrounding Duanmu Tachio and my father. It seemed that they really had something to talk about. I had been sitting there for a long time, and thinking about UXIN made me feel uncomfortable. So, I decided to take a walk in the garden. Since the party was held on the lawn behind the house, there weren't many people in the garden in front of the house. I walked and walked until I reached the flower pond that Duan Muke had built for me. I sat on the rattan chair and looked at the flowers in the pond. I felt that they were very beautiful. I looked up at the sky and saw the stars twinkling. My heart gradually calmed down. While I was admiring the scenery, I suddenly heard a man's voice from behind a tree next to the flower pond. "Why are you looking for me?" It sounded like two people. I quietly walked behind a tree in the corner of the flower pond and hid. At this time, I saw two figures standing not too far away. One was Han Hao, and the other was UXIN. The one who had just spoken was Han Hao. UXIN stood opposite Han Hao. "Han Hao, I won't beat around the bush. Do you like cold glaze?" Han Hao was stunned. Then he said in a serious tone, "What do you mean?" UXIN saw that Han Hao didn't answer her directly. She took 2 steps forward until she was almost in front of Han Hao. Han Hao took a step back, keeping a certain distance from her. UXIN smiled and said, "Unfortunately, I heard what you said to Duan Muke that night. Of course, I also know that you like cold glaze." Han Hao was shocked, but he calmly said, "This is my business. It has nothing to do with you. As long as you agree to work with me, I guarantee that you'll get cold glaze." UXIN looked at him with a confident expression. "You want to ruin Xiao Li's marriage?" Han Hao shouted angrily. UXIN put her hand on Han Hao's shoulder and said softly, "Don't get too excited. I have a lot of ways to make it impossible for her to stay in this house. But if you're willing to work with me, I guarantee that I won't hurt her. Han Hao pushed her hand away and said angrily, You Xin, don't be delusional. I won't agree. If Duanmu K knew that you wanted to harm them, you wouldn't be so arrogant as to say these things to me. Han Hao, you're too naive. Do you really think that Duanmu K likes Xiao Li because of who she is? You're wrong. Duanmu K only likes her because of her family background. Hearing Yu Xion's words, my heart trembled. Was she telling the truth? Han Hao walked past her and turned to her. Don't even think about hurting Xiao Li, and don't even think about trying to drive a wedge between them. I won't believe you. Yu Xion smiled and walked to Han Hao's side. She patted his shoulder and said, You can choose not to believe me. I can only say that sooner or later, you'll come back and beg me. You. Before Han Hao could say anything, Yu Xion waved at him and walked toward the living room, leaving Han Hao standing alone under the tree with an angry face. I walked out from under the tree and stood not too far away from Han Hao. Looking at his back, I thought about what Yu Xion had just said. My heart ached. I softly called out, Han Hao. Han Hao turned around and saw me. He walked over to me and took off his jacket. Xiao Li, why are you here? Be careful not to catch a cold. Don't disturb the baby. I looked at Han Hao and said, Is what Yu Xion said true? Han Hao raised his head and looked at me. After thinking for a while, he said, Don't think too much. Don't believe what she says. But look at what she's saying. It's obvious that she has enough evidence to prove that Duanmu K doesn't like me, and that he's just using me. Is that true? My eyes started to tear up. Han Hao didn't say anything. He just stood in front of me. I grabbed his arm and said softly, Han Hao, I've already fallen in love with him. I can't lose him. Han Hao looked at me and sighed. He helped me straighten my jacket and looked at me gently. Let's go. Let's go back. I understood that pressing him wouldn't get any results. I nodded and walked side by side with Han Hao to the living room. When we reached the door, we saw Duanmu K running out with a panicked face. When he saw me with Han Hao, his face changed instantly. He walked in front of us and looked at the jacket I was wearing. He pulled me to him and took off Han Hao's jacket. He took off his own jacket and put on me. Then, he threw the jacket to Han Hao and turned around to pull me into the room. Duanmu K didn't say a word when we entered the living room. He pulled me upstairs until we reached our room door. He opened the door and pulled me in. He closed the door behind him and stood in front of me. He didn't say a word, but I could see that his face was full of anger. I put the jacket on the bed. I sat on the edge of the bed and leaned against the pillow at the head of the bed. I felt exhausted both physically and mentally. Duanmu K stood in front of me and looked at me. Suddenly, he pressed on my shoulder and shouted, You can't forget Han Hao, can you? You just have to find a chance to be with him, right? I was stunned by Duanmu K's question. What are you talking about? I met him when I was wandering around. I didn't tell him that I'd eavesdropped on the conversation between Yu Xin and Han Hao. Duanmu K was a little unable to control his emotions. He forcefully pressed down on my shoulder and said to me, There are so many people you couldn't meet. Why did you meet him, and even wear his jacket? Chapter 37. When I saw that Duanmu K was throwing a tantrum at me, I was very angry. I shook off his hand and said, Han Hao knows that I'm pregnant. He was afraid that I would get cold, so he gave me a jacket. Why do you have to think that way? Are you drunk? Duanmu K came closer to me. He reached out and punched the headboard next to my head. Then he stared at me and said word by word, I won't let he pester you. When I saw that Duanmu K didn't believe that there was a relationship between Han Hao and me, I was very anxious. I hugged Duanmu K and said, There's really nothing between him and me. You have to believe me. Duanmu K pulled my arm away. He looked at me and said coldly, It's already been 3 times. This is just what I saw. What about the ones I didn't see? He suddenly stood up and walked toward the door. Then, he stopped and turned around to look at me. You've disappointed me. Duanmuke. I called his name, but he didn't turn around. He still walked out of the room. However, I didn't understand why Duanmuke was so angry today. Was it because he couldn't stand Han, Hao, and me walking together? I stood by the bed, but I didn't see Duanmu, Quebec. I didn't know where he went, and I didn't have the courage to look for him. When I thought about Duanmuke's angry face, I felt like my heart was breaking. I sat on the floor by the window and hugged myself. My tears couldn't stop flowing. As I cried and cried, I gradually fell asleep. In a daze, I opened my eyes and saw a figure walking towards me. He squatted down and carried me to the bed. I looked at the blurry face in a daze. It really looked like Duanmu, Quebec. I wrapped my arms around his neck tightly. He put me on the bed, and I lay there motionlessly. I felt him gently take off my dress and help me change into my pajamas. Then he covered me with the blanket. He walked to the other side of the bed, lifted the blanket, and lay down. He turned off the light. I turned over to face him, but I couldn't open my eyes. I felt him facing me too. Then I felt the warmth of his lips on my forehead. I closed my eyes and fell asleep peacefully. The next morning, when I woke up, I was the only one on the bed. I thought about what had happened last night. Was it a dream? But I had really changed into my pajamas. Wasn't that Duanmuke? Impossible. No one but Duanmuke would enter this room. While my thoughts were running wild, the nanny knocked on the door and asked me to go downstairs for breakfast. I tidied up and went to the dining table. Everyone was there. Duanmuke had already come downstairs and was eating breakfast. I greeted him and sat next to Duanmu, Quebec. I wanted to talk to him, but before I could open my mouth, he stood up and said that he had an early meeting and left. I lowered my head so that my parents wouldn't see my red eyes. After I finished my breakfast absent-mindedly, I found an excuse and ran to the side of the rose pool. Looking at the pool full of roses, I thought about what Duanmuke had said to me here that day, and his angry and cold words last night. My tears flowed uncontrollably. I curled up on the rattan chair and tried my best not to cry too loudly. "Air, what's wrong?" I heard my mother's voice. She sat next to me. I looked up and saw that she was crying even harder. My mother hugged me and asked me what had happened. I told her what had happened yesterday. My mother thought for a while and said, "Air, I think you should apologize to Xiao K tonight." I wiped my tears and said, "I also want to apologize to him, but he doesn't want to talk to me anymore." "How can that be? Xiao K likes you so much. This is only a small conflict. As long as you apologize, it will be resolved quickly." My mother hugged me and comforted me. I nodded slightly and decided to try my mother's method. I spent the rest of the day in the kitchen making desserts. I planned to let Duanmu K taste them when he was resting at work. It wasn't easy to make some good cakes. I put them on a plate and brought them to the room upstairs, waiting for Duanmu K to come back. It had been more than 2 hours since Duanmu K got off work. It was already dark outside, but he still hadn't come back. I sat on the chair next to the window and stared blankly outside. I still didn't see that familiar figure. I didn't know how long I had waited, but I was too tired. I lay on the round table and fell asleep. In my daze, I felt someone carry me to the bed, but I couldn't see his face clearly. When I woke up the next day, I was still the only one in the room. The cake I had left on the table hadn't been touched. My heart sank. When I went downstairs to find Duanmu K, the nanny said he had already gone out to work. In this way, for 4 or 5 days, Duanmu K left early and returned late. I couldn't see him at all. Several times, I fell asleep while waiting for him. When I woke up, I was already in bed. It seemed he really was avoiding me. One afternoon, I made a few more desserts to bring back to my room. Just as I reached the stairs, I met Yu Xian, who had just come out of the study. Yu Xian looked at my haggard face, then looked at the desserts in my hands. She stared at me and said, "I heard you and Duanmu Gij had a fight?" I looked at her and calmly said, "You're thinking too much. We're very good." "Really? It seems the picture I showed him of you and Han, how didn't have any effect." Yu Xian looked at me with a cold smile. What did you say? I suddenly understood that Uxin was trying to harm me. She took out her phone and showed it to me. On her phone was a picture of Han, Hao hugging me. I remembered this was the picture of Han, Hao hugging me on the second day of my wedding. I looked up at Uxin. You want to ask me where I got this picture, right? Our house's surveillance camera is very easy to intercept. Then she put the phone away. What do you mean? I looked at Uxin. I should have been on guard against her, but I was careless. I warned you a long time ago. You and Duanmugij aren't suitable. If you want to stay by his side and not leave, I can only use other means. Of course, this is just the beginning. Uxin smiled, then turned around and walked towards the door. Although I didn't know what she said when she sent the picture to Duanmuke, he was so angry right now. Uxin must have said a lot of nonsense. But how can I make Duanmuke understand that Han, Hao, and I are innocent? Just as I was holding the desserts in a daze at the top of the stairs, the door was pushed open. Duanmuke walked in from the door. He looked at me and walked straight towards me. He picked up the plate with one hand and pulled me upstairs with the other. Chapter 38. Duanmuke pulled me into the bedroom and closed the door. I stood to the side and looked at him. I didn't know what to say. Duanmuke put down the dessert. He turned around and suddenly hugged me. I was stunned. It had been a few days since I'd felt this familiar warmth. After a while, Duanmuke let go of me. He looked into my eyes and gently stroked my face. I hadn't seen him for a few days. Duanmuke looked very haggard. I'm sorry. You've suffered a lot these past few days. Duanmuke's eyes were moist. Although I didn't know why he said that, I didn't want to see him sad. I threw myself into his arms. I couldn't control my tears. I felt very safe in his arms. Duanmuke stroked my hair and hugged me tightly. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. His voice was hoarse. I lifted my head and looked at him. I stroked his face. Don't say that. It's my fault. I didn't consider your feelings. I'm sorry, husband. Duanmuke sat down on a chair and hugged me. I sat on his lap and hugged his neck tightly. Duanmuke said, I want to tell you something, but you have to promise me that you won't lose your temper. He stroked my belly. I nodded. Duanmuke said to me, these past few days, I did not intentionally give you the cold shoulder. I was like this because I was unhappy. What's going on? That day, at the birthday party, I was chatting with my friends, but Uxin suddenly pulled me aside and showed me a photo on her phone. In the photo, Han Hao was hugging you. I looked at what you and Han Hao were wearing at that time, and I was sure that you weren't dressed for the party. I remembered that Han Hao came to our house on the second day of our wedding, and I did see the two of you hugging from upstairs, but I believed that there was nothing going on between you and Han Hao. I just didn't know what Uxin meant by doing this. At that time, she told me that you had suddenly left, and I wanted to see what she would do next, so I went along with what she wanted me to do. I just happened to see you and Han Hao walking over at the door, so I pretended to be very angry. I pretended to be angry. Then why did you act so angry in the bedroom? Why didn't you tell me at that time? After hearing Duanmuke's words, my mood improved a lot. I was very angry at that time. Seeing the two of you together, wearing his jacket and thinking about that photo, I couldn't control my emotions. Besides, what if Uxin was eavesdropping at that time? If you want to put on a show, you have to put on a show. Duanmuke curled his lips. Then why did you treat me like that these past few days? Wouldn't it have been better if you secretly told me at night? I also curled my lips. After all, these past few days, I also felt very wronged. Duanmuke kissed me on the cheek, hugged me, and said, I originally wanted to tell you, but Yusin has been at home for the past few days and has been observing us. I didn't have a chance to talk to you. During the day, in front of Yusin, I couldn't show that I was good to you. When I came back at night, you were either sitting on the floor or sleeping on the table. I carried you to the bed and lay next to you to look at you. At that time, I had a lot of things to tell you. Then you didn't eat the dessert I made for you. You look much better than the dessert. After I came back, I looked at you and didn't notice anything. I fell asleep while looking at you. I patted his head and said, glib tongue. Then why did you want to talk to me about this today? My father arranged for you XIN to help him with something. So I took the opportunity to come back and tell you everything clearly. That way you can feel a bit more at ease. Seeing you so haggard these past few days, I don't feel good about it. I have to leave in a bit, or else she'll be suspicious. Puzzled, I asked, but why did you suddenly suspect her? Duan Muke put me down and stood up. Holding me in his arms, he softly said, everything is too coincidental. That day, right after you told me what UXIN did to those girls in high school, UXIN brought that photo. I don't want her to hurt you. I don't care about anything else, but as long as she threatens you and our child, I can't ignore it. Duan Muke held my face. You are with me right now, and that is more important than anything else. I leaned against Duan Muke's chest, tears streaming down my face again. After a while, Duan Muke looked at his watch and said, it's getting late. I should go back to the company. You should rest well and wait for me to come back tonight. Oh, right, I still have to continue acting. Thank you for your hard work, wife. I'm leaving. Duan Muke kissed me, then opened the door and left. I stood at the window and looked at his silhouette. As he walked away, he waved. I knew he was saying goodbye to me. I touched the glass window and smiled happily. I would no longer believe in UXIN or other people's rumors. I would believe that Duan Muke loved me, and that he loved me very much. Thinking about how Duan Muke wanted me to continue acting with him, I decided to cook dinner for everyone tonight. I went to the kitchen and asked the housekeeper for the ingredients for dinner. Then I began to prepare. Finally, it was evening, and the dinner I had prepared was almost ready. I asked the housekeeper to keep it a secret for me for the time being. Don't tell anyone that this dinner was mine, and I went upstairs to rest. Less than half an hour later, the housekeeper came to call me for dinner. When we arrived at the dining room, everyone was already seated. I looked at Duan Muke with a serious expression. I sat down next to him. He was almost done eating. At this time, Duan Muke said, tonight's dinner is different from usual. It's very delicious. Xiao Fengya called the housekeeper over and asked, Auntie, tonight's dinner is very good. Could you please tell the chef that? The housekeeper waved her hand and said, Madam, this meal wasn't prepared by the chef. It was prepared by the young madam. Everyone looked at me, and I lowered my head in embarrassment. My mother was very worried. Li Er, you're pregnant right now. Don't do these things. What if it affects the baby? Xiao Fengya agreed. That's right. Your health is important, Xiao Li. I smiled. It's okay. My health is good. I'm not tired. Duan Muke put down his chopsticks and stood up. He turned to go upstairs, but Xiao Fengya stopped him. Kay, or why are you eating so fast? Duan Muke stopped and turned to look at me. I don't have an appetite for her cooking. Then he turned and went upstairs. I knew that Duan Muke was acting, so I pretended to be very sad. I put down my chopsticks and lowered my head. I didn't look at anyone. At this time, UXIN stood up and said, I'm also done eating. Then she went upstairs. Chapter 39. I pretended to be very sad and sat there covering my face. My mother was very worried. She sat next to me and rubbed my head. Li Er, what happened? Did you and Xiao Kei have a fight? I didn't look up. Covering my face, I said, Mom, it's nothing. It's just that I made a mistake. Xiao Kei is angry. I didn't make him happy. At this time, Xiao Fengya said, This child is too disobedient. You're pregnant, and he still treats you like this. I'm going to have a good talk with him. Duan Muke also nodded. Xiao Li, don't be sad. I'll find a chance to talk with him. Don't be too emotional. You have to keep a normal attitude. I nodded and pretended to wipe the tears from the corners of my eyes. At this time, my father put down his chopsticks. Little brother, It just so happens that I have something to tell you and your sister-in-law today. Your sister-in-law and I have disturbed your family for a long time. We were planning to go back tomorrow, but we didn't expect something like this to happen. No matter what, at this time, I'll have to trouble you and your sister-in-law to take care of the child in Lierre's belly. Duan Mutachio said, "Don't worry, big brother. After all, that's my grandson. I'll definitely take good care of them." Then I'm relieved. My father nodded. Listening to my father and Duan Mutachio's conversation, I learned that my parents were going home tomorrow. The four parents sat around the dining table and talked for a long time. The general idea was that they were going to speak up for me and educate Duanmu, Quebec. Then they told me not to be angry and to take good care of myself and the child in my belly. I thought to myself, it seems that Duanmu K and I fooled our parents. But I don't know if it can fool you Xin. After talking for a while, I got up and went upstairs. When I reached the door, I heard a conversation inside. I leaned against the door and listened carefully. Judging from the voices, it should be Xin and Duanmu, Quebec. I heard Xin say to Duanmu K, "Duanmu Gij, did you fight with her?" Duanmu K replied, "Yes, I asked her what her relationship with Han Hao was, and she lied to me. I've always felt that there was something wrong with her." Xin's words revealed a hint of pride. "Why do you say that?" It seemed that Duanmu K was trying to fish for information from her again. "Duanmu Gij, think about it. She already knew Han Hao before she married you. Moreover, her relationship with Han Hao has always been very good. The two of them often interact with each other." Xin began to shift the blame onto Han Hao and me. "I know that. But big brother, have you thought about it? Does the child in her belly have to be yours?" Hearing Xin's words, I was shocked. Was she going to use my child as an excuse? "What do you mean?" Duanmu K's tone was clearly starting to get angry. "Duanmu Gij, do you remember the drinking contest between you and Cold Glaze? At the time, she was drunk, and Han Hao took her home. Do you dare to say that nothing happened between the two of them? Xin really dared to think. How long ago was that? Moreover, I was only 4 weeks pregnant, so the timing didn't match." Duanmu laughed and said, "Don't make wild guesses. She was only 4 weeks pregnant, so the timing didn't match. The drinking contest between her and I happened a month before we got married." It seemed that Duanmu K and I had the same idea. "But can you guarantee that the doctor who examined her didn't receive any benefits from her?" After Xin finished speaking, she didn't hear Duanmu K's response. Did he believe Xin's words? That's impossible. He knew how the child came about. How could I betray him? At this time, Xin continued, "Duanmu Gij, I'm going back first. If you want to investigate this matter thoroughly, let me know. I'll definitely help you. I'm going out." Hearing Xin's words, I quickly ran to the guest room next door, where my parents were temporarily staying, and hid. Luckily, they were both downstairs. I leaned against the door and heard the sound of our bedroom door opening and closing. It seemed that Xin had really left. At this time, I heard the sound of a door opening and closing. I guessed that at the end of the corridor, Xin had returned to her room. I straightened my clothes and nonchalantly opened the door and walked out. Seeing that there was no one else in the corridor, I quickened my pace and walked to my bedroom door. I opened the door and walked in, then quickly closed the door. I turned around and saw Duanmu K sitting at his desk, flipping through a book. Seeing my flustered appearance, he asked with a puzzled expression, "What's wrong? Why are you so nervous? What's going on?" I shook my head and walked in front of him. I pulled his hand and led him to the window. I whispered in his ear, "I accidentally overheard your conversation with Xin." Duanmu K looked at me with a surprised expression. "You heard everything she said?" I nodded. He smiled and stroked my hair. "Silly wife, don't think too much. I didn't believe her. I know. I just think that she's too good at spreading rumors. If you don't believe me, you'll definitely believe her. What should we do next?" I asked Duanmu K in a low voice. Duanmu K sat in his chair, deep in thought. UXIN's mind is too heavy. I'm guessing that on the night of my birthday, she was leaning against the door and overheard our conversation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to tell me all kinds of bad things about you every day. She even prepared evidence. If it were anyone else, they would have believed her already. It's a good thing that I know her a little bit. So, are we going to continue our Cold War? Mom and Dad asked me today, so I can only continue with the act. Dad probably wants to talk to me. Before he talks, we'll continue to pretend that we're fighting. After he talks to me, we'll pretend that we're slowly reconciling. That way, it won't be so unnatural. That's the only way. The main thing is that Dad has to scold you. I don't feel good about it. I was a little unhappy. Aya, you're thinking too much. I'm used to being scolded by him. It's fine, don't worry. Dwanmuke pulled my hand and hugged me. I leaned on his shoulder and didn't say anything else. As expected, Dwanmutachio went to talk to Dwanmuke the next day after seeing my parents off. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked into the living room. UXIN was sitting on the sofa reading a book. I didn't know if she was really reading or eavesdropping. The conversation was really effective, although it was also part of our plan. In order to not appear too stiff, that night, Dwanmuke took the initiative to talk to me at the dinner table. Just like that, our simple conversation was seen by everyone. During dinner, I glanced at UXIN out of the corner of my eye. My expression became unnatural. It seemed that we had completely disrupted her plan. Chapter 40. In the next few days, the relationship between Dwanmuke and I became closer and closer, and UXIN's expression also became colder and colder. During the days when Dwanmuke and I were pretending to be in a Cold War, UXIN would hang out with everyone in the living room almost every day, especially when Dwanmuke was there. But after we reconciled, she returned to the way she was when I first met her, always locking herself in her room and refusing to come out. Today was the day I had to go to the hospital for a pregnancy test. After breakfast, Dwanmutachio and Dwanmuke went to the company for a meeting. Originally, Xiaofingya wanted to accompany me, but she received a call in the morning and had an urgent matter to attend to. There was no other way, so she arranged for UXIN to go with me for the test. After arranging everything, she left in a hurry. Actually, I refused in my heart. I didn't want UXIN to go with me. She hated me so much. Who knew what she would do to me? Originally, I planned to call Dwanmuke, but then I remembered that he was in a meeting, so I hung up the phone. Fortunately, Xiaofingya arranged for a driver to take us to the hospital before we left. This way, there wouldn't be any problems on the way. Since there were so many people at the hospital, she probably wouldn't do anything out of line. In this way, we got into the car and drove to the hospital. No one spoke to each other on the way, and we arrived at the hospital in such an awkward atmosphere. I told the driver to find a place to wait for us and send us home after the test. Since we had made an appointment with the doctor in advance, we didn't have to wait in line. After the test, we just had to wait for the report. UXIN accompanied me the whole time. She didn't say a word and followed me wherever I went. Every day felt like a year when I was with her. Finally, it was time to pick up the report. It was almost noon, and there were more and more people in the hospital. The place to pick up the report was the second building across from the doctor's office. I didn't want to ask UXIN for help, so I walked to the second building myself. UXIN followed me closely. I thought for a moment and said, UXIN, why don't you go back? I can do it alone. She didn't say anything. She looked at me and followed me. Seeing that she didn't respond, I continued, why don't you wait for me at that place? UXIN looked at me and said coldly, what? Are you afraid I'll hurt you? She said what I was thinking, but I couldn't show it. I smiled and replied, what are you thinking? I'm just worried you'll be too tired. UXIN sneered, Lung Yuli, I really can't underestimate you anymore. What do you mean? I knew she was about to turn hostile. What do you mean? I thought I could sway Dwanmu Gij's heart. Just as I was about to succeed, I didn't expect you to join forces with Uncle Duanmu to ruin my plan. Do you know how happy I was when you and Duanmu Gij quarreled? You don't know how happy I am, especially when I see your dispirited appearance. You Xin walked behind me and spoke in a very low voice, but I heard every single word very clearly. At this time, we arrived at the entrance to the first floor. Because we had to cross a corridor to get to the second building, there were cars from the hospital on both sides. Plus, there were people coming and going, so we had to be careful if we wanted to get to the other side. At this time, there were a few people who also wanted to go, so I decided to go with them. I looked behind me and saw you Xin. Then I turned my back to her and said, "You can only see the bad in others, but not the good in others. No matter how much we quarrel, we're still together." The crowd began to move to the other side. I tried to keep up with the crowd. At this time, I heard you Xin say, "Maybe if you die, we'll really separate." Hearing you Xion's vicious words, I wanted to turn around and argue with her, but I felt a pair of hands push me hard on the back. I lost my balance and fell to the ground. I subconsciously covered my stomach with my hands. At this time, an ear-piercing car horn sounded. An ambulance was speeding towards me. I subconsciously covered my face with my hands. The moment I turned my face, I saw you Xion's cold face. The moment I raised my hands, I felt the whole world stop. I closed my eyes and waited for death to come. Gradually, the noise around me became louder and louder. When I opened my eyes again, I moved my hands away. The front of the ambulance was only 10 centimeters away from me. Thank God I was still alive. I suddenly remembered that I had just fallen. Did I hurt the baby in my stomach? At this time, several medical staff ran to my side and helped me up. They asked me if I felt any discomfort. I held my stomach and anxiously said to one of the medical staff, "Please, take me to the gynecology department." Several medical staff put me on a stretcher. They took me to the doctor's consultation room and told him what had happened. As soon as the doctor listened, he immediately gave me a thorough examination of the fetus and arranged for me to be hospitalized. As soon as my room was arranged, you Xin appeared in front of me again. I didn't talk to her and called Duanmu, Quebec. I told him what had happened, but I didn't tell him that I had been pushed down. Soon, Duanmu K brought the parents of both families to the hospital. When they saw me lying on the bed, Xiao Fengya cried really hard. She said that it was because she hadn't accompanied me to the hospital. That was why something like this had happened. Duanmu K sat next to me and held my hand. Everyone was anxiously waiting for the report. Eventually, the doctor came to the room with the report. He briefly explained the results of the examination. Although I had been frightened, I hadn't hurt the fetus. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Duanmu K kept holding my hand, but his face was full of anger. After the doctor left, Duanmu K found an excuse to send both parents away, leaving behind you Xin. When he came back, he locked the door of the room and stood at the door, staring at you Xin. You Xin looked at him, but didn't say anything. Xin, don't you have anything to say to me? Duanmu K asked first. No, I answered simply, but it directly ignited Duanmu K's fuse. No. Then how did Xiao Li fall and almost get hit by a car? Duanmu K shouted at her. At this time, Yu Xin cried. She sat on a chair and wiped her tears. I don't know. At that time, we were walking with a few people to the opposite building, but I couldn't keep up with her. When I saw her again, she had already fallen to the ground. At this time, an ambulance drove towards her. I didn't have time to save her, but fortunately, the car didn't hit her. Chapter 41. When Duanmu K heard Yu Xion's words, he suddenly walked towards her. Yu Xin kept retreating until she reached the foot of the wall. Duanmu K pressed his right hand on Yu Xion's shoulder and pressed her against the wall. Duanmu K said fiercely, "Yu Xin, if you deliberately set up my wife, then don't blame me for being rude to you." Then he let go of Yu Xin. Leave. I don't want to see you right now. Yu Xian looked sadly at Duan Muke, then at me. Clutching her shoulder, she walked out of the room. Hearing her close the door, Duan Muke walked to my side and held my hand. His expression was solemn. I understood that Duan Muke was worried that I had been wronged. I rubbed his head and smiled. Hubby, smile. I can't smile. He lowered his head. His voice was full of sadness. Don't be sad. I'm fine, aren't I? It's obvious that she pushed you. She hurt you once, so she'll hurt you a second time and a third time. No way. You already lost your temper with her. How could she still do that? Although I didn't believe it myself. Duan Muke's eyes blurred as he looked out the window. I hope so. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. With the doctor's permission, I was discharged and went home. After that incident, I wasn't allowed to do anything at home. Later, I got Duan Mutachio's permission. As long as it wasn't during his office hours, I could go in and out of his study to read. That way, I could kill time by reading. I hadn't seen Yu Xian for a week. Later, I heard from Xiao Fengya that Yu Xian had asked Duan Mutachio to go on a business trip. It just so happened that Duan Mutachio had a project that required him to go abroad for inspection. So he sent her out. It would probably take half a month for her to return. I thought that since she wasn't home, I could relax a little. That night, when Duan Muke came home from work, we sat down to eat dinner. Because of the pregnancy reaction, my anorexia was getting worse. I sat next to Duan Muke and absent-mindedly picked at the rice in my bowl with my chopsticks. Looking at the table full of dishes, I had no appetite. Xiao Fengya saw that I had no appetite. Xiaoli, what's wrong? Is today's food not to your taste? I shook my head and said, Mom, no. The food today was pretty good. I just couldn't eat it. Your pregnancy reaction is too obvious. What do you want to eat? I'll arrange for someone to cook it. Xiao Fengya sighed. Duan Muke put down his chopsticks and said to Duan Mutachio and Xiao Fengya, Dad, Mom, look at Xiao Li's situation. She can't eat a lot of the food we eat. She can only watch. I want to find someone who specializes in cooking for Xiao Li. What do you think? I pulled Duan Muke's sleeve and said in a low voice, Don't mess around. I'm fine. It's good to eat together like this. Xiao Fengya shook her head. Why do you need to find someone else? The person you're looking for isn't familiar with Xiao Li, and they don't know what she likes to eat. Just leave it to me. Duan Muke turned to look at me. I nodded at him. He said to Xiao Fengya, Okay, Mom, thank you for your hard work. I said in a low voice, Mom, there's no need to go through so much trouble. I'm fine with anything. You don't have to make anything for me. Xiao Fengya smiled and said, Silly child, what's the big deal? You're fine. Your father and I both think so. I lowered my head in embarrassment. Just like that, from the second day onwards, Xiao Fengya would make a special nutritious meal for me for every meal. At the beginning, my appetite wasn't very strong, but as time passed, I gradually could eat a little more. Xiao Fengya was very happy to see my appetite increase. That night, just as I finished eating dinner and was about to go upstairs, I saw Yu Xian walk in with her luggage. When she saw me, she froze for a moment. She looked at me and didn't say a word. She took her luggage and went back to her bedroom. It seemed she had returned from her business trip. I would have to face her again in the future. The next morning, everyone sat at the table to eat. As usual, Xiao Fengya brought my breakfast to me. Looking at the breakfast, I smiled at Xiao Fengya and said, Thank you, Mom. My reaction isn't as strong now. There's no need to go through so much trouble. It's a good thing you have to wake up early every day to make nutritious meals for me. Xiao Fengya sat across from me and said, Silly child, what are you talking about? I helplessly looked at Duan Muke and gave him a look. He seemed to understand and said to Xiao Fengya, Mom, I don't think there's any need to go through so much trouble. Let's take a break. If we work so hard, I'm afraid my dad will beat me. When Duan Mutachio heard this, he gave me a look of disdain. Xiao Fengya smiled and said, Okay. But we still have to finish today's meal. Today's ingredients just happened to be delivered. mm. I nodded and glanced at Uxin opposite me. She had been eating with her head lowered the entire time. After eating breakfast, Duanmu Tachio and Duanmu K went to work. Uxin went back to her room to get used to the time difference. After eating, I wanted to help clean up, but I was kicked out of the kitchen by Xiao Fengya. Helpless, I could only go to Duanmu Tachio's study. Xiao Fengya was in the kitchen preparing today's lunch. The morning sun shone through the glass window into the study room, making it warm. I don't know if I was tired, but I actually fell asleep on the sofa. When I woke up again, the nanny was already knocking on the door to ask me to go out for dinner. It seems that I slept for a long time, directly sleeping from morning to noon. I went to the dining room. Xiao Fengya had prepared a sumptuous lunch. Although it was only me, Xiao Fengya, and Uxin eating, there was still a lot of food prepared. After Xiao Fengya and I sat down, she called the nanny over. Go upstairs and call Uxin down to eat. The nanny nodded and went upstairs. After a while, Uxin came to the table with a confused expression. Xiao Fengya looked at her and asked, "What's wrong? Are you still not awake?" Uxin rubbed her eyes and shook her head. "No, I'm awake. Okay, let's eat." Then she looked at me and said, "Shaoli, eat more. I made this especially for you." She picked up some cabbage and put it in my bowl. "Thank you, Mom." I glanced at Uxin. She was still eating with her head down. It seemed she didn't want to talk to me, so I didn't take the initiative to talk to her. About halfway through the meal, I vaguely felt a pain in my stomach. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, but it became more and more painful. My forehead began to sweat. I put down my chopsticks and clutched my stomach. At this time, Xiao Fengya saw that I wasn't in a good state, so she quickly asked, "Shaoli, what's wrong?" I clutched my stomach and raised my head with difficulty. Mom, hurry and take me to the hospital." Chapter 42. Gradually, my consciousness became blurry, and my limbs felt weak. I didn't know who was carrying me and running. Then, I got into the car. I didn't know how long it had been bumpy. Then, I smelled the hospital's disinfectant, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on the hospital bed. There were many people standing around me. Duanmu K was standing next to me, his eyes red. Duanmu Tachio and Xiao Fengya were standing there, too. My parents were there, too. Uxin was standing in the corner. Although I was awake, I couldn't move my body. Duanmu K saw that I was awake. He pulled my hand and called the doctor to check on me. The doctor gave me a simple checkup and checked the case. Then he called Duanmu K and the others to the side and whispered something. Then he left. Duanmu K sat next to me with a sad face. I raised my hand and touched his face. I asked softly, "What's wrong?" Duanmu K didn't answer me. Instead, he turned his back and covered his face. It seemed he was crying. I was even more puzzled. Could it be that I had a miscarriage because of the severe abdominal pain? I pulled his shirt and asked, "What's wrong? Where's the baby? Is the baby still here?" Duanmu K didn't answer. Instead, he twitched even harder. I let go of his shirt and lay there. I felt as if my world had collapsed. My tears couldn't stop. My baby is gone. My baby is gone. Why is it like this? Why? I asked myself again and again in my heart. Duanmu K turned around and continued to cover his face. He sobbed and said, "Waifu, I'm sorry. Waifu, our baby. What's wrong with the baby?" I was even more agitated. I pulled his arm and asked, "He's fine." He suddenly moved his hand away from his face and smiled mischievously. I stood there dumbfounded, while Duanmu K was laughing so hard that he was about to fall to the ground. "What did you say?" I thought I might be dreaming, so I confirmed it with him again. Duanmu K hugged me and said, "I said, our baby is fine. Nothing happened to him at all." After hearing Duanmu K's answer, I knew that he was playing with me. He wanted me to think that something bad had happened to the baby. I was so angry that I pinched him and pushed him away. He grimaced and covered the spot where I had pinched him. He looked at me with an aggrieved face. Although I knew the truth, I still couldn't stop my tears from flowing down. I hugged my legs tightly and sat on the hospital bed, crying bitterly. Duanmuke saw that the joke had gone too far. He walked over and hugged me. He gently stroked my hair and said, "Waifu, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have played such a joke on you. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Don't cry." I hugged Duanmuke and hammered his chest as hard as I could. I cried even harder. After a while, my emotions calmed down. Duanmutachio said to the two servants at the door, "Bring in the cook and the nanny." The two of them left the hospital room. Not long after, they brought in the cook and the nanny. Duanmutachio sat on the sofa and gestured for my father and mother to sit as well. After sitting down, Duanmutachio asked me with a serious face, "Shaoli, tell us what happened." I nodded and told him everything that happened during lunch. After listening to my description, Duanmutachio turned to Xiao Fengya and asked, "Did you prepare today's lunch?" Xiao Fengya wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and said, "I prepared it." Was there a problem with the ingredients, condiments, and seasonings? No, they were all normal dishes. I ate all of them, but nothing happened to me. Seeing Duanmutachio question Xiao Fengya, I secretly pulled Duanmuke over and asked, "What's going on? Why is Dad questioning Mom?" Duanmuke moved closer to my ear and said, "You don't know yet, right? You accidentally ate saffron. Luckily, you didn't eat much. If you didn't have stomach cramps and rushed to the hospital in time, the baby would have died." Hearing Duanmuke's words, I broke out in a cold sweat. Heavens, how could I be so careless as to eat saffron? Was someone trying to frame me? Duanmu Lixiong continued, "I don't care who did this. I hope you can come out and admit to it. Don't let me find out. If that happens, things will get serious." Hearing Duanmu Lixiong's words, no one dared to speak. Duanmutachio motioned for Xiao Fengya to stand to the side. He pointed at Uxin and asked, "Uxin, what were you doing between breakfast and lunch?" Uxin said, "After breakfast, I went back to my room to sleep. I slept until the nanny came upstairs to call me for lunch." Duanmutachio looked at the nanny. "Were you the one who called her for lunch?" The nanny replied, "Yes, master. I also called her young madam." Duanmutachio continued, "During that time, did you see anyone other than the young madam, you, and the chef enter or leave the kitchen?" The nanny shook her head. "No, definitely not. When the chef was cooking, he told me that he didn't have enough white sugar, so I went out to buy some. I don't know what happened during that time." At that moment, the door to the room was pushed open. A nurse came in and handed a report to Duanmu, Quebec. Then she left. Duanmuke looked at the report, then handed it to Duanmutachio. Duanmutachio took the report and looked at the chef. "It seems that you and the nanny are the biggest suspects. The report the nurse just sent says that the entire table of lunch, except for the rice, contains crocus. I think you should give me an explanation." The nanny and the chef were scared silly. The chef said, "Master, there's no reason for me to harm the young madam. I've been with the Duanmu family for so long. There's no way I would harm anyone. If I wanted to harm the young madam, why didn't I do it from the beginning?" The nanny also said, "Master, I've always been by the young madam's side. There's no chance for me to harm the young madam. The young madam has always been good to us. There's no reason for us to harm her." After listening to the chef and the nanny, I was 100% sure that they weren't the culprits. I glanced at Uxin, who was standing in the corner. The corners of her mouth lifted. I immediately understood. Other than her, no one would harm me. However, I didn't have any evidence to prove that she was the culprit. Still, I couldn't wrongly accuse an innocent person. I forced myself to sit up and said, "Dad, wait a moment." Duanmuke helped me up and used a pillow to steady me. I said, "Dad, let's just let it go. I believe that no one did it. Just treat it as if it was for me and the baby. Don't investigate further." Chapter 43. Duanmu Tachio didn't answer, but Duanmu K wasn't happy. He looked at me and said, "We can't just let this go. This matter must be investigated to the end." Duanmu K gave me a look. I knew that he had already guessed that UXIN was behind this, and wanted to borrow Duanmu Tachio's hand to drag her out. At this time, Duanmu Tachio nodded. My father also said, "Lier, I think what Xiao K said makes sense. This matter needs to be investigated. Since she started framing you when you were pregnant, when you were born, wouldn't it have gotten worse?" I shook my head and looked at Duanmu Tachio. "Dad, just promise me. I think that if the baby knows, he won't want to pursue this matter." Duanmu Tachio thought for a moment and said, "Okay, I promise Xiaoli today. This matter will be over. But if something like this happens again, don't blame me for being hostile." Then he left with Xiaofengya. Mother and father also stood up. Mother looked at the housekeeper and the cook and said, "You guys can go back. It's fine now." Then she left the room with the cook and the housekeeper. Only UXIN, Duanmu K, and I were left. UXIN looked at us and walked towards the door without saying a word. At this time, Duanmu K called out to her, "Wait a moment." UXIN stopped and turned around to look at Duanmu Quebec. "I hope this is the last time." Duanmu K looked at her and said resolutely. UXIN was stunned for a moment. Then she sneered and ran out of the door without looking back, leaving me and Duanmu K alone. Duanmu K sat next to me and stroked my hair thoughtfully. He didn't say a word. Looking at his face, I felt that there was something on his mind. Seeing that he didn't say anything, I reached out and grabbed his hand. "What's wrong?" "That expression." Duanmu K thought for a moment and said, "Wife, let's move out. I have a villa in the suburbs. Let's move there. That way, we won't have to worry about anyone harming us." "But Mom and Dad won't agree. Plus, your work is too far away, and you have to take care of me. Every day, you'll be very tired. When my belly gets bigger, I won't be able to cook for you." I told him my thoughts. "Nothing is more important than you and the baby. It doesn't matter if I'm a bit tired. I'll talk to Mom and Dad. As for cooking, I can slowly learn. Is that okay, wife?" Duanmu K looked at me with expectant eyes. Seeing that he was so considerate of me, I couldn't think of any reason to refuse him. "Okay, I'll listen to you. When I'm discharged, we'll talk to Mom and Dad." Duanmu K nodded and hugged me. We stayed in the hospital for almost 2 weeks before the doctor allowed us to leave. Although it was safe to stay in the hospital, it wasn't as comfortable as staying at home. On the day we were discharged, Duanmu K finished the discharge procedures early and took me home. The whole family greeted us at the door. After taking me to the living room, Duanmu K invited Duanmu Tachio and Xiaofengya to the study. After the 4 of us sat down, Duanmu K closed the door to the study. "Dad, Mom, Xiaoli and I have something to talk to you about." Duanmu K closed the door and sat down. "What is it?" Duanmu Tachio looked at him. Duanmu K looked at me and then said to Duanmu Tachio, "Dad, Xiaoli and I have decided to move to the villa in the suburbs until Xiaoli gives birth." Duanmu Tachio and Xiaofengya were stunned. They looked at each other. Then Xiaofengya asked, Why do you suddenly want to move out? It's happened several times already. I think it's too dangerous to stay in this house. It's not that I don't trust you and Dad, I just don't trust other people. Son, you're thinking too much. Mom already paid a lot of attention this time. All the ingredients were bought by me, and all the dishes were made by me. This kind of thing definitely won't happen again." Hearing Xiaofengya's words, I felt very uncomfortable in my heart. "Mom, that's not what we meant. I also trust that you'll take good care of Xiaoli. So many things have happened in our house, and I'm scared. Besides, after we move out, you and Dad can come here often." Duanmu K still insisted. I pulled Duanmu K's sleeve and whispered, "Let's forget about it. If we really move out, Mom and Dad won't feel good." Duanmu K looked at me and said, "It's okay. Mom and Dad will understand." I saw that Xiaofengya's eyes were glistening with tears. She was trying hard not to let them fall. At this time, Duan Mutachio said, "Okay, that's a good idea. How about this? You move out 2 days later. I'll send someone to tidy up the house first. Then, I'll see if you need anything." Dad. Xiao Fengya was about to open her mouth, but Duan Mutachio stopped her. She had no choice but to secretly wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. "Thank you, Dad. We'll stay for 2 more days. We'll move out on the weekend." Hearing Duan Mukei's words, Xiao Fengya cried even harder. I walked over to her and gently comforted her, wiping away her tears. When the discussion was almost over, Duan Mukei and Mom and Dad were still talking about other things. I found an excuse and left the study because I had something very important to do. I had to find Xin and talk to her. I sent a message to Xin, telling her that I was waiting for her by the flower pond. I walked to the flower pond. Although I hadn't taken care of it for a long time, the roses in the pond were still blooming beautifully. It seemed that someone had taken care of them for me while I wasn't here. I sat on the rattan chair and smelled the sweet fragrance. My mood calmed down. At this time, I saw a figure slowly walk toward me. I couldn't be more familiar. It was Xin. She walked in front of me and looked at me. Then, she sat on the edge of the flower pond opposite me. She looked at the flowers in the pond, her eyes blurred. "Why did you call me here?" she asked. I thought for a moment and said, "Xin, I won't beat around the bush with you. Can you let go of my child?" "I think you're mistaken. Your child is fine in your belly." Xin turned to look at me and then at the flower pond. "Do you dare to swear that everything that happened to me had nothing to do with you?" Xin's denial was within my expectations. I just didn't expect her to say it so matter-of-factly. Xin turned her head and sneered. She looked at me and said, "So what if I did it?" I calmed down and said to her, "I don't care what you did to me in the past. Fortunately, my child is still growing healthily. I just hope that from now on, you won't hurt us anymore." Chapter 44. Xin stood up and walked in front of me. She held my face and said, "You're too polite. You have such a beautiful face, but your IQ is obviously not as good as your looks. Don't you understand? You're an extra in this family. Not only are you an extra, but the child in your belly is an extra as well. When you weren't here, this family was very warm. But after you came, everyone was on your side. They almost forgot about my existence." I shook off Xin's hand and said, "You think too highly of yourself. If it weren't for the things you did, would Duan Mukei have started to hate you?" "Shut up." Xin shouted at me. "Your appearance completely confused Duan Mugij. If it weren't for you, he would have fulfilled the promise he made to me when we were young. He would have married me. You didn't just confuse him, you also messed up my life. You're really hopeless. It seems that when Dad wanted to investigate, I should have supported him instead of standing up to stop him." Xin sneered and said, "You think he'll find out if you let him? Why wouldn't he find out? I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. Indeed, I was the one who pushed you down at the hospital. Of course, I didn't push you. I pushed someone else. That person bumped into you and directly knocked you to the ground. The timing was so coincidental. Just at that time, a car drove over, but I didn't expect you to be so lucky." Listening to Xin's recount of the events of that day, although I had already guessed that she was the one who did it, I was still shocked. Xin continued, "As for the incident where you accidentally ate the saffron, I can only say that I think the heavens were helping me that day. When I walked into the living room from upstairs, I saw Xiao Fengya asleep on the sofa, so I pretended to look for fruit and walked into the kitchen. At that time, the nanny wasn't there. She said that day that I found out that she went out to buy seasonings. The chef was the only one left in the kitchen. He was busy cooking, and all the dishes were placed on the table. This was a golden opportunity. Do you think I would miss it? Aren't you afraid that I'll sue you for murder?" I looked at Xin and asked. Xin walked in front of me and pressed me against the rattan chair. "Sue me? You can't do it. You're too soft-hearted. I noticed it not long after you came here. It's because of your weakness that I have a chance to play with you. Aren't you afraid that Duan will find out your true colors? If Xin had a weakness, it would be her love for Duanmu. Quebec Xin froze for a moment, then let go of me. She sat across from me and said, I did everything for him. No matter how bad he treats me, I still love him. Even if he confronts me, I will let him understand my thoughts. Hearing Xin's words, I couldn't help but sneer. Xin, you're too naive. Do you really think that Duanmu will believe your words? Xin stood up and looked at me. You'll know sooner or later that I'm right. After saying that, Xin turned around and walked towards the living room. I sat on the rattan chair and thought about what Xin had said. I suddenly felt that she was very pitiful. She truly loved someone, and for that person, she lost her good nature and became a cold-blooded animal. Fortunately, we'll be leaving in a few days. We won't have to worry about her trying to harm us. I stayed for a while, then returned to my room. Just as I was about to go upstairs, I saw the nanny carrying a box of beer, carefully climbing the stairs. I walked toward her and asked, What's this? When the nanny saw me, she put the box down. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and said, Young mistress, this is the beer Xin wanted. She asked me to bring it to her. I looked at her suspiciously. Why does she want beer? You haven't been home for a few days, so you don't know. She's been like this for several days. She gets drunk every day. Sometimes she doesn't eat when we call her to eat. Madam and master don't know what to do with her, so they just let her be. That's not right. I'll go with you. Then I followed the nanny to Xin's room. The nanny knocked on the door, put down the box of beer, and left. When I entered the room, the smell of alcohol hit my face. I subconsciously covered my nose and moved toward the door. I glanced at Xin's room. Although it wasn't very big, it was very clean. There was nothing in the room except for a single bed, a wardrobe with 3 doors, and a simple desk. Xin was sitting on the floor, leaning against the window. She was holding a bottle of beer in one hand and covering her head with the other, looking at the scenery outside the window. Seeing that she didn't respond, I knocked on the door. She looked up, saw me, and turned her head away. I leaned against the doorpost and crossed my arms in front of my chest. I looked at her and asked, What's the point of ruining yourself? Xin didn't turn her head. She coldly replied, That's my business. It has nothing to do with you. I don't want to care about you, and I know you don't want me to care about you either. You want Duanmu to care about you, so you can act pitiful in front of him. Do you think it's useful? Are you done talking? This is my room. Please leave. Xin looked at me impatiently and glared at me. I don't want to stay here either. I hope you can do what I told you in the garden. The biggest difference between you and me is our understanding of love. Love isn't hate, but mutual giving and dependence. At this moment, Xin stood up and walked towards me with an empty bottle of beer in her hand. She stopped in front of me. I didn't dodge, and she didn't move. At this moment, Duanmu's voice came from behind us. What are you doing? I turned around and saw Duanmu Quebec. Xin also saw Duanmu Quebec. Her sharp eyes instantly became very gentle. Duanmu walked towards us. He stopped in front of me and looked at the bottle of beer in Xin's hand. Then he looked at me and said, Wifey, why are you here? This place reeks of alcohol. You can't stay here. Go back first. I want to talk to her. I shook my head, indicating that I didn't want him to talk to Xin alone. Duanmu patted my shoulder and gave me a meaningful look. Be good, go back in, and have a good rest. You haven't rested since you came back from the hospital. I don't know where you went to play. I'll talk to her for a while. Don't worry, you can't eavesdrop outside the door. If I find out, I'll punish you. I understood that he had come prepared. It seemed like he had something to talk to Xin about. I glanced at Xin, then turned around and walked toward the bedroom door. When I reached the bedroom, I turned around and saw that Xin's door was closed. Chapter 45. I anxiously waited in my room for Duanmuke to come back. I was worried that he would hurt Uxian, but I was also worried that he would be bewitched by Uxian. Perhaps it was just like Uxian said, my heart was too soft. No matter how much Uxian tried to frame me, I still had to think about how to resolve the conflict between us. I sat in front of my desk, casually flipping through a book, but I wasn't paying attention. I was thinking about what Uxian and Duanmuke were talking about in that room. At this time, the door was pushed open, and Duanmuke walked in. He looked at me with a helpless expression, then threw himself onto the bed and covered his head with a pillow. I walked over and lay down next to him, leaning my head on his shoulder. Duanmuke took the opportunity to pull me into his arms without saying a word. "What's wrong?" I asked, gently patting his back. "Shaoli, I suddenly feel like there's nothing I can do for you." He hugged me tightly. "You're thinking too much. You've already done enough for me." I cupped his face. "What did Uxian say to you to make you like this?" Uxian keeps saying that she likes me, that she loves me, but I feel like her love is too selfish. Actually, I know how she feels about you. Seeing her stubbornness without any results. Sometimes I feel that she's very pitiful." I gently patted his back. "After you left, I told her that if she were to hurt you again, I wouldn't let her go. But when I was about to leave, she hugged me from behind. I broke free from her grip and asked her to control her emotions. But I didn't expect her to push me to the ground and press me under her body. She kissed my lips without restraint and even began to take off her clothes. When I saw her like that, I felt extremely disgusted. So I pushed her away and slapped her. Duanmuke covered his head. "You slapped her?" Sure enough, what I was worried about happened. Duanmuke looked at me and nodded. "And then? You just came out?" After I slapped her, she sat on the ground in shock. Then she stood up and took off all her clothes in front of me. I didn't look at her. I just told her to have some self-respect and was about to come out. But I didn't expect her to stop me. "What did she say to you?" Duanmuke sighed again. "She said that even if I didn't have feelings for her, she would still love me. She would also remove all the people around me who would endanger her feelings for me, including you." I stroked his hair. "That's what I expected," I said. I don't know if she said she was angry or not, but I warned her that if she kept bothering us, I would kick her out and she wouldn't even take half a step into our house. It seemed Duanmuke didn't know what to do with her. To put it bluntly, Uxian cared about him too much. That was why she had done so many wrong things. Although he and I both knew that Uxian had done it, we didn't have any evidence. Duanmuke hugged me. All right. I don't want to think about it anymore. You don't want to think about it either. I'm tired. Lie down with me for a while." Then he hugged me. I leaned against his chest and listened to his heartbeat. Gradually, I closed my eyes. When I woke up again, it was already nighttime. I looked at the time. It was time for dinner. I woke Duanmuke up. After tidying up, we went downstairs. Xiao Fengya had already prepared a table full of dishes. After we sat down, Duanmuke glanced at the dishes on the table. Then he looked at Uxian and Xiao Fengya. Xiao Fengya seemed to understand something. "Don't worry. I bought the food and cooked it myself." "What's wrong? You don't even trust your mother?" No. Duanmuke made a face at Xiao Fengya. Then he sat next to me and filled my plate with food. I felt very embarrassed. While we were eating, Duanmuke suddenly remembered something. He turned to Duanmu Tachio and asked, "Father, have you arranged things for us at the villa?" "It's already been arranged. Your Uncle Zhang sent people over. When they went in to take a look, there were quite a few things missing in the villa, including purchasing and simple decorating. It would take about a week," Duanmu Lixiong said. Duanmuke thought for a moment and said, "Father, can you speed things up?" I glanced at Uxian. Although she was eating with her head lowered, I could feel that her expression was becoming more and more unnatural. It seemed she knew that we were going to move out. At this time, Xiao Fengya said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Do you have to leave? Can't you stay?" "I think your mother is right," If it's just the two of you, food and shelter will be a problem. If you can't do it, you can stay here. I've made up my mind. If you don't want to tell me, I'll tell Uncle Zhang to hurry up. Duan Muke put down his bowl and chopsticks. His expression was very serious. Xiao Fengya also put down her chopsticks. If you can't do it, why don't you ask Xiao Li's mother to come and live with us? That way, you can rest assured and we can both take care of Xiao Li. What do you think? Mother, don't worry about it. This has nothing to do with you. I was the one who insisted on moving out with Xiao Li. Xiao Li objected, but she agreed in the end. So, you should agree too. Uxin said, why do you have to move out? It's better to stay at home. Duan Muke glared at Uxin and said impatiently, I don't think it's up to you to control what I do. Duan Muke, what kind of attitude is this? Is this how you treat your mother and Uxin? Duan Mutachio lost his temper and fiercely slammed his chopsticks on the table. Seeing that Duan Mutachio was angry, I pulled Duan Muke's arm and asked him to stop talking. Duan Muke moved my hand away and said to Duan Mutachio, Father, I don't want to talk about it. No matter what, I've already made up my mind. I'll contact Uncle Zhang. You, Mother, and Uxin, please don't get involved. I'm done eating. I'm going upstairs. Then, Duan Muke went upstairs without looking back. Duan Mutachio was so angry that he slammed the table. I hurried to his side and comforted him. Father, don't be angry. I'll go upstairs and talk to him. Don't be angry. What if you hurt your body? That's right. Did you break your hand? Let me see. Xiao Fengya pulled Duan Mutachio's hand away from the table. It was red and swollen. Look at you. Your hand is swollen. Let K or do whatever he wants. He's old enough to know when to stop. Don't be angry. I'll go get the first aid kit. I'll go. I stood up and was about to go to the living room to get the first aid kit, but Uxin stopped me. She stood in front of me and said, I'll go. Then, she turned and walked to the living room. Chapter 46. After Uxin brought the first aid kit over, Xiao Fengya carefully bandaged Duan Mutachio's injured hand. After Duan Muke's tantrum, no one could eat anymore. I saw that Duan Mutachio's anger had almost subsided, and Xiao Fengya was comforting him. Uxin said she was going out to do something, so she found an excuse to leave the restaurant. I felt that I was unnecessary, and since I was worried about Duan Muke, who was sulking upstairs, I found an excuse to return to my room. I pushed open the door. Duan Muke was half naked, and he was wearing a pair of casual pants. He was sitting on a stall by the window, staring blankly out the window. I walked over to him and sat down, leaning my head on his shoulder. He didn't speak, and neither did I. The two of us leaned against each other by the window. I didn't know what he was thinking, and he didn't know what I was thinking. After a while, Duan Muke raised his arm and pulled me into his embrace. I hugged him back, and he gently patted me. What's wrong? I shook my head. It's so good to have you. Silly, what nonsense are you talking about? Duan Muke cupped my face and kissed me on the lips. Feeling the warmth of his kiss, I tightly hugged his neck and whispered, no matter what, no matter where I go, as long as I have you by my side, it's enough. I understand. I understand. Just now, I really didn't control my emotions well. I shouldn't have vented my dissatisfaction towards others on the people who care about me the most. After I came up, I also reflected on my actions. I didn't consider Mom and Dad's feelings. Don't worry, I'll apologize to them later. Duan Muke lovingly stroked my hair. That's my good husband. I kissed him on the cheek. Silly wife, I'll go now. Duan Muke let go of me and stood up. He opened his bag and took out a t-shirt to put on. I sat there quietly, looking at his perfect body in front of me. As he changed, Duan Muke said, It's a bit late today. I'll call Uncle Zhang tomorrow morning. It'll be best if we can move out in 2 days. If we stay here for one more day, I'll think that Uxin wants to harm you. Okay, I'll listen to you. Duan Muke made a handsome pose for me, then went to find Duan Mutachio and Xiao Fengya to apologize. Duan Muke went downstairs for more than 2 hours before he came back. When he came back and saw his happy expression, I knew that our family had reconciled. I wasn't as nervous as before. The next day, Duan Muke contacted Uncle Zhang early in the morning and asked him to speed up the process. It would be best if we could move out as soon as possible. Uncle Zhang also agreed to increase work efficiency. When the arrangements were almost done, he would contact Douanmu, Quebec. The next few days seemed to have returned to normal. I spent more time reading in the study or admiring the flowers in the garden. As the baby grew bigger day by day, my pregnancy symptoms weren't as obvious. My appetite had greatly improved. Every time Xiao Fengya saw that my appetite was getting better, she felt very happy. 2 days later, we finally received a call from Douanmu, Quebec. He told us that we could move in. Everything was ready. Duan Muke and I only brought a few sets of clothes. The villa was well prepared, so we didn't need to bring much. Duan Muke asked a few of his subordinates to move all the luggage out of the villa. He stood at the door and watched to see if they had forgotten anything. I watched from the bedroom and did a simple check. Almost all of the luggage had been moved out. At this moment, Uxin came upstairs. We bumped into each other at the door of my bedroom. She stopped at the door as if she had something to say to me. I gave a few instructions to the people moving the luggage. Then I pulled Uxin into the house and closed the door. I turned to look at Uxin. What's the matter? Uxin glanced at me and said, I thought you guys were just saying it casually that day. I didn't expect you to really do it. You made the right choice. You even knew to move in order to avoid me. I was stunned. I thought for a moment and said, you guessed wrong. We didn't move to avoid you. We just wanted to live alone. Do you think I'll believe that? Uxin sneered. Then she sat on Duan Muke's bed. She gently stroked the bedspread and looked at me. Although I hate you, sometimes I envy you. You can be in Duan Muge's arms. You can be by his side. You can also be in his heart. Did you know? If it weren't for your engagement, I was very confident that I could use my own means to climb into his bed and become his woman. Now it's all ruined because of you. Love is something between two people. If one person is willing and the other doesn't, do you think it will last? You clearly know that Xiao Ke doesn't love you, but you still want to use your selfish love to bind him. Do you think he will be happy? I asked her back. Do you really think that I won't do anything to you after you move? Uxin stood up and walked toward me. She stared into my eyes. Uxin, you can hurt me, but you don't have the right to hurt the child in my belly. This child belongs to Douanmu's family. It belongs to Douanmu, Quebec. Let alone you. Even I don't have the right to hurt it. You better take care of yourself. Regardless of whether Uxin was telling the truth or not, I really didn't want my child to be hurt. That's only your and Duan Muke's child. Do you think you're the only one who can have a child? Don't be naive. Do you think Uncle Duanmu and Auntie Xiao are so good to you just because of the engagement? If you weren't carrying Duanmu's child in your belly, would they still be so good to you? Don't be naive. Uxin looked at me mockingly. Whatever you say, I can only tell you that if you still want to do anything, don't blame me for being impolite. I was lenient with you before because I thought you were pitiful. I didn't expect you to use my soft-heartedness as a tool to frame me. After we move out, we probably won't be able to see each other for a long time. That's good. I don't have to see your face as if you've done something wrong. I turned around and opened the door, preparing to leave. Uxin said to me from behind, you will regret it. Everything that happened before was just the beginning. The real show has just begun. Hearing Uxin's words, I could imagine her evil smile. Just thinking about it made me feel very uncomfortable. I ignored her, closed the door, and walked downstairs. The people who helped us move were no longer in the living room. Duan Muke, Duanmu Tachio, and Xiao Fengya were standing in the living room, chatting about something. Duan Muke raised his head and saw me. He waved at me. Thinking that I was about to start a new life with him, I felt very happy. Chapter 47. When I saw Duan Muke, I waved at him and carefully walked down the stairs. Ever since I was pregnant, Duan Muke had been worried that the stairs would be too slippery. He was afraid that I would fall, so he had carpeted the stairs. It was much more convenient. Not only was it safe to walk, but there were also no noisy footsteps. I looked at Duanmu Quebec. He was looking at me from the bottom of the stairs with a smile on his face. I held onto the handrail and walked towards him slowly. When I was halfway there, my left foot had just stepped on the carpet at the bottom of the stairs when I felt the carpet move. I was so shocked that I grabbed onto the handrail with all my might and took a step forward with my right foot. If I hadn't taken this step, there might not have been any accidents. My right foot twisted on the stairs, and I lost my balance and rolled down the stairs. Xiao Li. I heard Duan Muke's hoarse shout. He quickly ran to my side and hugged me. Xiao Li, don't scare me. Duan Muke hugged me tightly. I was stunned. At this moment, Duan Mutachio and Xiao Fengya rushed to my side. I leaned against Duan Muke's chest, and I felt a sharp pain in my right ankle. I forced myself to sit up to check my injury. At this moment, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. I clutched my abdomen and leaned back against Duan Muke's chest. Xiao Fengya screamed. She covered her mouth and sat on the floor. Duan Muke looked at her and said, "Mom, what's wrong? Don't scare us at this time." Xiao Fengya pointed at my abdomen with one hand and covered her mouth with the other. Trembling, she said, quick. Take her to the hospital. Quick." I grabbed Duan Muke's arm and asked, "Xiao Kai, what's wrong?" Duan Muke looked in the direction Xiao Fengya was pointing and froze. Then he became very serious. He carried me out the door and said, "It's too late. I'm taking you to the hospital." The moment Duan Muke picked me up, my gaze landed on Yu Xian's sneering face at the staircase on the second floor. Duan Muke didn't tell me what had happened. He just carried me and ran. He put me in the back seat of his car and drove me to the hospital. Usually, it would take 15 minutes to get to the hospital, but today, Duan Muke took less than 5 minutes to get to the hospital. I didn't know how many traffic lights he ran on the way there, and I didn't know how much he was speeding. After he arrived at the hospital, he threw the car to the side of the road and rushed to the emergency room with me in his arms. Along the way, my consciousness became more and more blurry. I only remembered that Duan Muke carried me onto a stretcher. Then a group of people surrounded us. There were nurses and doctors, but Duan Muke wasn't there. After that, I completely lost consciousness. Since I was pregnant, I didn't know how many times I had fainted. I felt like I had a dream. I dreamed that Yu Xian was standing not too far away with a dagger in her hand. She was pointing it at a heart with the word K written on it. She was using the dagger to cut the heart. The ground was covered in blood, but she didn't stop. She was carefully cutting the heart again and again. I suddenly woke up from the dream. When I woke up, I saw Duan Muke, Duan Mutachio, Xiao Fengya, and my parents next to me. Everyone was looking at me with a sad expression. Xiao Fengya saw me open my eyes and turned around. I saw her shoulders shaking. I guessed that she was crying. Even Duan Mutachio and my father, who were usually cold and indifferent, had a worried look on their faces. Duan Muke held my hand and lowered his head. He didn't say anything. I seemed to have guessed the terrible result, but there was still a glimmer of hope in my heart. I hoped that my guess was wrong. I pulled Duan Muke's hand. He raised his head and looked at me. I could see that his eyes were red and swollen. It seemed that he had cried too. I asked him softly, "Hubby, I'm okay, right? Although I fell, it wasn't very high. Is the baby okay?" Duan Muke looked at me. His eyes were red. He stroked my hair and said, "The doctor said that you're okay. You just sprained both your feet to different degrees." But he didn't continue and turned his head away. My head buzzed. I grabbed Duan Muke's sleeve and shouted, "But what?" My mother saw that I couldn't control my emotions. She hurried to my side and pulled my hand away from Duan Muke's sleeve. Then, she signaled to Xiao Fengya to pull Duan Muke to the side. Seeing that no one answered me, I became even more anxious. I shouted, "But what?" My mother hugged me tightly and stroked my hair. She said softly, "Lee, air be good. Don't get too excited. The doctor said that your body is very weak right now. You need to rest." I couldn't stop my tears from flowing down. I hugged my mother tightly. "Mom, what happened? Why didn't you tell me? Did something happen to the baby?" I clutched my mother's clothes, crying very sadly. My mother gently patted my back and said, "Lee, air, you're still young. Believe me, there will be more babies in the future." I could feel that my mother's voice was choked with sobs when she said that. My mind blanked out. The baby is gone? I cried even harder. I felt that the whole world had become very dark. Duanmuke walked to our side. He wiped my mother's tears and helped her to the sofa. Then he sat next to me. I looked up and saw his crying face. I threw myself into his arms, my tears soaking his clothes. "Wifey, I'm sorry." Duanmuke hugged me. He couldn't control his tears either. "It's all my fault. I didn't take good care of you. I know you're sad. You can hit me if you don't feel so sad." I leaned on Duanmuke's shoulder and tore at his clothes. I bit the flesh on his shoulder, causing him to grimace in pain. He didn't push me away. I didn't know what I was thinking anymore. There was only one sentence in my head, and that was that the baby was no longer here. I didn't know how long I cried. Duanmuke kept hugging me. Maybe it was because my body was too weak after the miscarriage. Gradually, I didn't even have the strength to cry. Duanmuke laid me down on the bed and covered me with the blanket. He held my hand and looked at me. I reached out and touched the spot where his tears had streaked. I thought about how I had found out that I was pregnant and how the baby was gone. I felt very upset. As I thought about it, my tears fell again. Duanmuke saw that I was crying and couldn't control his emotions. You're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.